Well, a very warm welcome to you from myself, Tim Hutchings, and Paula Radcliffe beside me here to the city of running. We're in Valencia on the east coast of Spain, about 300 kilometers south of Barcelona, for this IAAF Trinidad Alfonso World Half Marathon Championships Valencia 2018, to give it its rather grand, complete title. It's the 23rd edition of these World Half Marathon Championships, and this is a city that we know produces fast running again and again. The local organising committee are a very dedicated crew. Conditions, as ever in these parts of the world, are near perfect, around 15 degrees centigrade the air temperature, although very, very strong winds blowing in from the northwest, as we can make out at the moment, across the city. Indeed, winds of around 40 to 50 kilometers an hour, or even stronger, have been predicted. There's blue skies above us at the moment, and as you can see, the city of sciences and the arts in Valencia, world famous indeed, should be one of the wonders of the world. It's quite astonishing, this portfolio of magnificent structures here in Spain's third largest city, third busiest city. The races that we have coming at us, two of them, the Women's Half Marathon Championship at 5 past the hour, that's Central European time, so in about 7 or 8 minutes, and the men 25 minutes later at 5:30 Central European time. Unusual to have races starting at this time of day, but we can have a look at the course now as the athletes initially head off in a northerly direction on this anti-clockwise course, winding through the city on streets that are absolutely, well, just about dead flat. The course has very, very few undulations, and Paula, this of course a huge advantage to athletes. It enables them to get into a really nice rhythm.
Yes, it does, and it's very much a course that, like, a city that touts itself as a city that loves running, and a course that's been designed to give the athletes an opportunity to get a really fast run in.
Well, Joycelyn Koski last October broke the world record for the half marathon in the women's race that day, 64:51. That's where they reached 9 kilometers, the Palace of Music. So we know this is a world record course. It slightly differs from that course that Koski, the Kenyan, set her world record on. She is racing today. She's an outstanding favourite, although we know she does have her vulnerabilities. Just early last month in Ras Al Khaimah in the United Arab Emirates, she finished in 5th place, although we understand she did have 1 or 2 lady-like ailments on the day. How's your Spanish, Paula?
Not good, I'm afraid.
Not good? I thought you were multilingual.
That's the Serrano Towers.
Thank you very much. The Serrano Towers there in this course at 15 kilometers. This is where they've got wind behind them at this stage. Generally, the second half of the course, they should have a following wind for much of it. And of course, most of the time, they're embedded amongst the buildings of this city. A glorious city that it is. The 5th busiest container port in Europe and the busiest in the entire Mediterranean, I understand. It's a city that has rerouted, or changed itself, I should say, quite spectacularly over the last few decades, as they carry on this journey around the city, following the old riverbed, this Muria riverbed, the Turia riverbed, which has been converted into a giant park. The river was rerouted after the floods of 1957. Most of the city back then was under 2 meters of water, and they rerouted the river so that the old riverbed, which is where you can see now these glorious structures are based, as we are here in this commentary position by the finish line, is now just a 17-kilometer long park. It's a glorious facility for the city, which was, I understand, prior to the adjustment, actually short of green space anyway.
Yeah, and now they've very much capitalised on that, and if you're running anywhere in this park, you see nothing but other runners and cyclists enjoying the space.
Well, there's the start line for this ladies' field, this women's field. And I can tell you there are 122 women from 53 nations taking part. 14 of those ladies have broken 70 minutes. That's the sort of magical entry figure to world-class running for the ladies over the half marathon, under 70 minutes. It calls itself the Ciudad del Running, the city of running. With over 50 races a year organised here, they really do know their stuff. It hosts 2 IAAF Gold Label races, the most recent of which, of course, was that half marathon back in October, where Koski broke the world record. There were some good Spanish athletes running today as well. So there will be plenty of support, I'm sure, for the best of the locals, the national team. Bit of a shame, Paula, that these winds have come up so strongly this last couple of afternoons. It was quite strong yesterday afternoon and again today, because there has been talk of, you know, Koski, for example, if she's on song, threatening her own world record today.
Yeah, there was definite hopes for that, hopes for a very fast race on the men's side as well. And unfortunately, it looks like these winds might just put paid to anybody who might want to push out hard early on, because unless they drop, although it is forecast to drop slightly in the next couple of hours, but if it's going to drop enough, we don't know. But I think you're right, Tim. I think amongst the shade of the buildings and the shadow of the buildings, there may be some shelter to be had.
Well, they're almost ready to go. The start is about 3 or 4 minutes away. They're due to get underway at 5 past the hour. You can see good crowds in the background. Now, that's because the mass race that goes off with the men has some 15,000 athletes in it. They do this here in Valencia very, very well, stage these mass races, and it's a feature which was very, very well received in Cardiff 2 years ago, in the pouring rain of Cardiff. Very, very different conditions back then. It was actually 1 year and 363 days ago that Jeffrey Camworall lifted the title there, defeating Karoki and Mo Farah into second and third in pouring rain. It was an astonishing run. Many people felt his run that day 2 years back in Cardiff was the equivalent of a world record, because he went well under 60 minutes and he'd fallen over at the start as well. There you can see the start on the bridge. Now, we are going to focus, I believe, on a few significant athletes who are racing, some of the bigger names there. Nervous moments these for the athletes. Paula, what would you have been thinking right now with a couple of minutes to go?
I think really all of the last-minute preparations are done at this point, and you really just want to get the race underway and get away safely. I mean, it's usually a lot safer in a road race than it would be on a track race in terms of starts, but there still are hazards that can happen, particularly when it's as windy as it is today. So I think on that bridge where they're starting, it is a lot windier than on a lot of the course. It's more exposed, so you just keep an eye out for debris blowing around as well. You don't want your race to be spoiled at the last moment.
And, I mean, would your warm-up for a half marathon been pretty much similar to your warm-up for a track race? Did you vary much? You know, it's 20 minutes of jogging and a few strides and a bit of stretching. That's what I used to do. I
mean, maybe a little bit less jogging, because you're going to have plenty of time in the race to actually get into it, but you need to be ready to go from the off. And what we're seeing there are the lists for the world record, for the women's only world record, set in these championships back in 2007 in Udine by Lorna Kiplagat, and then the world lead for this year.
Yeah, the world lead for this year by a fancy Chemutai, 64.52. Of course, a lot quicker than the world record, but that world record, as Paula said, was in a women's only race, as this is today. So this race is eligible for a world record, should we be that lucky. And I don't know if the ladies prefer women-only races or not. Marta Esteban of Spain, the Spanish number 2, and home advantage for this 2:30 marathon runner at 35. She will be very experienced, and the wind might make that a factor. Might be a tactical race. Shitai Eshete of Bahrain, a former Ethiopian, one of the 14 women under 70 minutes in this race. Great 10,000-meter runner. Rose Chilemo, the reigning world champion at the marathon from London last year. Again, running for Bahrain, the former Kenyan. Second in Boston last year in 2:22. She's very strong. There's Ruth Chepngetich of Kenya. They have only 3 athletes running, but a very strong trio. She ran 6 half marathons last year and won 4 of them. Joyceline Koski, the world record holder, massive favourite here. She set that world record last November in this city, 64.51 on the 22nd of October. Has lost her last couple of races, ironically, though. Netzanet Kebede, her first race of 2018. She won here in 2015 in 67.31 and improved that best to 67.26 in Delhi last November. So some fabulous names on the front line there in this women's field. As I said, 122 strong, quite a spread of abilities, but 14 of them have gone under 70 minutes. The Kenyan team are strong favourites, 3 to score. Any team can have 5 run, 3 to score, and the Kenyans have had 1, 2, 3 in the last 2 occasions. Here we go. Well, they get underway then. The racing has started at the IAAF Trinidad Alfonso World Half Marathon Championships, Valencia 2018. Now, Paula, I know you'll be a fascinated observer of this race and the men's race. They start, remember, in 25 minutes' time. Now the wind, how much do you think that changes the way that the top names will approach this?
I think it very much depends on the athlete. I think it's a consideration. In pack racing, there are some people who really say if they're tucked into the pack, they don't notice the wind that badly. But if you go out on your own and you try and front run the race, then of course you will notice it. Having said that, there are ebbs and flows in that wind naturally. The way that the course bends, there will be some parts where it's a crosswind, there will be some parts where it's behind you, and it actually is almost like running kind of fartlek style. You can go hard into the wind and then get a little bit of a breather when you have that wind at your back for a spell. And in amongst the tall buildings, there will be that advantage as well. So I think it's about thinking intelligently and thinking on your feet while you're racing, and being able to adapt your strategy by listening to your body and working hard when you can and when you can get the most out of it.
What about the option for one of the big names, let's say Joycelyn Jepkosgei, the favourite, of going out really hard the first 2 or 3 kilometres, opening up a gap, and then everybody else will watch themselves, and whoever's at the front of that group will have to be running into the wind just as much as you are?
Absolutely, and there's something to be said for that. If you do want to run hard, then what you want to do is make it a race where everybody is racing in the same conditions, so you string it out as fast as possible from the beginning so that everybody is running into that headwind and everybody has the same conditions to fight against throughout the race. The disadvantage to that strategy is if it backfires and you just push too hard in the beginning and then you don't have the strength to hold on in the second half of the race.
Well, that's exactly right. I think we can probably assume Jepkosgei has got sufficient strength. She had a quite astonishing 2017. When we get to see her, I'll let you know a little bit more about that racing season of Jepkosgei, where she just smashed records, world records, almost for fun. But it looks to me, certainly over that first few hundred metres, like they set off at a pretty healthy clip. Trying to see, just looking at the map again, whether or not they had the wind behind them. I think they have a tailwind at the moment, a side wind at the moment. It should be coming from their left.
Yeah, I think through the first kilometre they had a small kind of mix, 50-50 into the wind and then with the wind behind them. We might get an indication from the way that we see their vests going or some of the trees alongside the road there, but it doesn't look as though it's too bad on this stretch that they're on at the moment. And there's a healthy pack there. It's not startlingly fast. We'll get an idea when they must be approaching now the first kilometre split, so we'll have an idea of the pace that they've set out on there.
Well, there was Jepkosgei we saw just now, the world record holder. If they were to run around 70 minutes today, and don't let's forget she's run 64.51, she's run over 5 minutes quicker than that, they'd be running around 3:19 per kilometre. So we will get 5 kilometre splits for you, for these lead athletes. And obviously, if they go through 5 kilometres in around 16:20, then we'll know they're on something like 16:40, something like 70 minutes tempo. So let's hope it's a little bit quicker than that. 70 minutes is pretty much the benchmark of world class, as I said. Bobicel there of Romania, running alongside her compatriot Berka. But already the field getting very strung out, only 3 3/4 minutes on the clock. So clearly it's pretty healthy up in front. And I mean, it has to be said, Paula, that there is a gulf in class between the very best athletes out there. The Kenyan trio, for example, Chepngetich, Jepkosgei and Kamulu, and perhaps the Ethiopians as well, compared with some athletes here who are here to represent their nation, give their kids back home somebody to be proud of, but actually are going to get beaten by 10 minutes and more.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the nature of a big race like this. When you have a big field, everybody has their own objectives and will have their own successes within the race, which not every woman on the start line here believes that she has a chance of winning this race. As a handful do, but the others are racing just to give it their best effort, and much in the same vein as the mass runners going later on will do. They just want to get a good run out and just to walk off knowing that they've given it their best effort in the race today, and they will be aiming at different strategies in the race to be able to get to that end objective.
Well, you can see Jepkosgei there, second to right, or third to right in fact, but one of the two across the front rank. 24 years old now, Jepkosgei. Lovely long loping stride. She's got Quite a contrast to Jep Ngetic there to the extreme right of your picture, who has a much shorter pitter-patter type of stride. And Kamulu, their teammate, to the left of that trio across the front. So it is the Kenyans in 1, 2, 3. And in 2014 in Copenhagen and 2 years ago in Cardiff in Wales, the Kenyans not only won the team race, but they did it with the lowest possible point score, Paula, didn't they? They got 1, 2, 3. They took all the individual medals and the team gold.
Yeah, I think they did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe even. They've filled a lot of the top 6 spaces. They can't do that today because there was a little bit of a confusion with their team entries. And as I understand it, they didn't name reserves. So then when Fancy Chemutai and one other athlete pulled out,
Mary
Wasera pulled out, then they weren't able to replace them. So they do just have the 3 runners, which means should something go wrong for them out there on the course and they can't finish the race, the Kenyans can't complete. They can't field a complete team, so they won't be able to figure.
Yeah, just to clarify that, teams were allowed to put 7 names forward, 5 of whom would be able to run, and the Kenyans only put 5 names forward. Then 2 athletes pulled out. Fancy Chemutai, the second fastest athlete in history, who won the Iraq half marathon last month, just missing the world record by 1 second, and Mary Wasera, who's a very, very strong athlete, indeed the bronze medalist 2 years ago. Now, there's a host of great Kenyan athletes back home in Kenya who would love to have been named as reserves, and in particular, I think Chilemo was one of them who would like to have been there. They didn't name any reserves, though, the Kenyan Federation. Joan Chilemo it was, who ran 65 minutes in RAC last month. And she's having to sit and watch this. Quite bizarre, really. But nonetheless, the Kenyans with a strong trio, and as long as they all come home, then they have a good chance of that team title. Yeah, they do. I don't know if Bahrain have a full team, but Bahrain also have a strong contingent out there. And, of course, there's the Ethiopians. But outside of that, I think there are openings for other teams to be able to come through and maybe get a podium finish as a team. Well, that group beginning to ease away now. What is it, about 10 strong, something like that? And, of course, with some teams now recruiting from other countries. The Bahrain team includes Eunice Chumba, former Kenyan, who is amongst the favourites. Certainly if there's any hiccup by the favourite Jeb Koski, she could be one of those to step into the breach. Shitai Eshete is a former Ethiopian running for Bahrain. And she certainly will be very strong. You can see Gebre there for Ethiopia.
For Spain.
For Spain, excuse me.
We're looking at the battle, I think, maybe for the first European finisher there between Fabiana Schlumpf and Gebre of Spain.
Gebre is the quickest of the Spanish, indeed the fastest European in the race. Tough though, isn't it, when in a race, Paul, like this, where you've probably never experienced it, but if you get dropped early on in a race, you've obviously reached a limit and you've had to pull back from that. From then on, you're running in a sort of compromised state.
Yes, you are, and you're kind of left with that dilemma as the brakes start to open up and groups start to move away. Do you push a little bit harder than it feels like your body is capable of going to be able to stay with the pack and risk that you won't be able to hold on? Or do you just run a little bit more conservatively, knowing that then you might well end up running in no man's land, as it were, for a lot of the race and having to work hard on your own to try and get back to the runners in front?
You know what's really notable as we see this pack of, about 12, I guess, is Jep Koski there, right in the centre, at the front. How bouncy she is. She really bounces, doesn't she? I mean, a lot of people would say, well, classically, in terms of technique, it's a complete waste of energy. Your centre of gravity is going up and down a lot, and ideally you want your centre of gravity to be virtually moving horizontally with no movement. Yeah, you don't want to waste too much energy. She's a very powerful runner. We see now they're approaching 3 kilometres, so that's a pretty quick split through there. They're running less than 3:07 for kilometre pace. We'll work out roughly what that puts it, but I think it puts it on a pretty good schedule. But Jeb Koski she's actually a very powerful runner, and she's very strong in her upper legs, and that's maybe why she seems to bounce as much as she does. She's also got quite a lot of movement in her upper body, but it doesn't seem to cost her any efficiency, and that 64:51 time that she ran, it's mind-blowing. It is, isn't it? 3:07. Well, it puts them on something like 66:20, something in that sort of region. Not far outside 66 minutes tempo, so it is very quick indeed. Well, they're strung out almost in single file. I wonder if this is a windy section. They're at 3 kilometers. And yes, they have just turned into the wind. If they went through with 3 kilometers, they turned just before that point, heading in a northwesterly direction, so into the teeth of this very strong breeze blowing around Valencia. There's about 14 in that lead pack, actually. Just had a chance to count them there. And the average pace so far is 3:08 per kilometer. So very healthy indeed. And there have to be some optimists in that lead group, Paula. I know that there are, 14 women in the race who have broken 70 minutes, but goodness me, operating at 66-minute tempo is a different kettle of fish.
Yeah, and I think it maybe reflects slightly the differing mentalities or racing mentalities that we see from the different continents. And certainly the Kenyan athletes have a lot more of a kind of just hang on as long as you can mentality to racing, rather than trying to pace it perfectly to finish the end of the race strongly. They will just hold on to the lead group for as long as they possibly can. And then after that, just try and keep their body together to be able to get to the finish.
Well, Chilemo is in that lead group, the world half marathon champion, 28-year-old former Kenyan, running for Bahrain. Ran 2:22 last year when she took that second place in Boston. And they are shifting here. They will begin to whittle down this pack very quickly, I suspect, because there have to be at least 4 or 5 women in this group who just won't be able to sustain this for very long. That's a lovely shot there of them from side on, turning on the pace. And if I didn't know better, I'd say maybe there's been a slight acceleration there from Koski. I wonder if she's just decided to start making these kilometers count.
Yeah, it looks like she's maybe just trying to test out the others in that group, just to put her foot down a little bit, pick up the pace, and just see how many people react and how they react. If they react easily, or if she can hear that there's some labouring in the way that they're managing to stay with her. And she's chosen to do that in one of the windier sections, and now she's turned to get a little bit of a break before she'll attack into the wind again.
.13 now the group is down to. It was 14. You can see one athlete at their top of picture who has just had to ease back on the throttle, face that painful truth. And actually Chilemo at the back of the group now, in that white and red of Bahrain. Looks like she might be struggling a little bit. And that is the athlete who's dropped off that lead pack as our bike camera roars up towards the lead group. And of course it is a game of patience, isn't it, Paula? Is when you're at the front, something like this, you just have to keep cranking out, I mean, you know this better than most people, keep cranking out that really quick tempo, and you know it's hurting the people behind you, even if you can't see the pain on their faces or know what's going on in their heads.
Yeah, you have to know that it's hurting them and have confidence in what you're doing and stick to it, to know that as much as you are getting tired, they must be getting tired as well, and that you just need to get that chink of daylight to start to open up between you and the following pack, and then you can make that grow, and that gives you confidence as much as it grows. And we can see, is that Chilemo just already dropped away now off the back of that group? So her tactic is working. She's whittling the group down, and one by one people will drop off this. The question is, can she sustain it? Because I think that was the big question in the RAC half marathon, that she maybe just went a little bit too quick in the early stages and wasn't able to come back in the second half as strongly, and the others just ran away from her.
Well, her personal best is 68 minutes, Chilemo, so on paper she's over 3 minutes slower than Koski, for example, so I suppose she's entitled to be feeling the tempo. She is more of a marathon runner. Koski, of course, there in the centre with that vest just hanging outside her, that red vest hanging outside her black shorts, is yet to delve into marathon territory. It'll be one of the most exciting debuts when she does. But that leading group, as we can see names coming up on our screens, Markonen of Bahrain, Coates of Canada, Mekkonen is there as well. But it is a group dominated by the Africans. And it's almost as though they're paying some sort of deference to Koski, isn't it? Because there's 3 Kenyans across the front, Koski in the centre, Kamulu to the left, Chepngetich to the right, then those green and red and yellow Ethiopian colours tucked in behind them. it's almost as though they're waiting for her to fulfill that Pied Piper role.
Yeah, it's maybe, I mean, she's definitely their main favourite hope, and then they're almost like the others are a wing woman, and they're just there to protect her, to kind of stop her getting too bashed around or pushed around on the course by the other teams, and just to ensure that she gets as smooth a run at it as possible. When it comes down to the closing stages, then it becomes each for your own and to try and win the race.
Well, Tejeda of Peru, Gladys Tejeda of Peru there at the back of that chasing group. Looks like she's working very hard to stay with them. And there's another aspect to this running style of Jep Koski, the world record holder. Because she lopes, she's got a long, powerful stride. It makes her look even more relaxed. 15:39 there for 5 kilometres has just come up on the screens. We'll transfer that to a predicted time for you. But Paula, clearly that means they're operating at what, around 3:08?
Yeah, it's very quick running, especially given the wind and given the conditions. And we talked beforehand about the fact that the course had been designed and improved, and the course organisers had visions of there being another world record run on this course. Unfortunately, the winds are so strong that an outright world record probably isn't going to happen, but many of the women in that lead pack certainly will be aware of the fact that Lorna Kiplagat does hold the women's only world record, and this of course qualifies as a women's only race. As we look, there's just Charlotte Purdue of Great Britain going through the 5 kilometre mark and having a good run and a good season so far, but many of those women will be aiming for that time, which is more realistic in these conditions. It's 66:25, and they're pretty much on that pace.
Yeah, that is probably slightly inside that at the moment, as we see some familiar faces. Gemma Steele of Great Britain going through there. Divers there. And these women, I'm afraid, have received exactly what they might have feared, and that is a hard, fast pace slapped down on the road in front of them by the favourites from the word go, and there was no chance of them going with that early pace. There was a little group there of Spanish vests, I think, running together. Home advantage for them, but it's of limited benefit, I have to say. This is not soccer or some other sports where the psychology of home, playing in your home stadium, can make a massive difference. And is that another athlete dropping away off the back of the group? I think Chilemo, Rose Chilemo, the world marathon champion, has gone some time ago. Yeah, Rose Chilemo to the right of picture there. It's Kamulu of Kenya, the 23-year-old who's a 68-minute athlete at her best, who is just peeled off the back of the group. So I'd like to get that shot where you can count the numbers in the group as we see a close-up of Chilemo, the world marathon champion from London last summer. What a great race that was. But unfortunately, as you can see, 73 minutes her form this year, Paula, and that just doesn't cut it at world-class level.
No, it doesn't, and I think she's finding that out now. She's struggling. She obviously struggled already in that race. 73 is far from her personal best of 68 minutes, so she's probably targeting, I'm not sure which, but she's probably targeting the spring marathon, and we'll be getting ready for that. So has come into this race as a bit of a tune-up, and maybe found that it's a little bit more of a tune-up than she's ready for with those miles in her legs.
Well, there's the team positions at 5 kilometres. Kenya out in front, but the other teams expected to be up there were as well. Ethiopia too. So at 5k, Kenya with a healthy, well, I say a healthy lead. Of course, there's still plenty of Ethiopians right up there, so almost identical team times. Romania, France, USA. It's a well-supported event, this. Really good representation from around the world. Although the IAAF as a global body has something like 220 federation members.
Yeah, and just to clarify for those team standings, the way that they work it out at the World Half Marathon Championships is to make it a cumulative time for the runners, which gives an advantage if you're going to go out really hard and run a lot faster, because even if you finish in the same position, if you run a couple of seconds quicker, then that helps your team that little bit more.
Interestingly, Kamulu had regained contact in that last shot. I thought a couple of minutes ago we saw her 10 metres or so back. There she is to extreme right of picture. Very small, pitter-patter stride she's got compared with the power and really well-muscled legs of Jep Koski. can see the large bull in the background. Of course, bull rings are still very much in evidence here in Spain. Whatever your view on that. Chumba is there as well. And Kebede in that yellow vest of Ethiopia. I wonder if any of these Ethiopians can spring a surprise. They haven't entered a particularly strong team, the Ethiopians. One or two people raising their eyebrows at the Ethiopian squad today, feeling that some really big names just haven't stepped up. But of course that is often because they've got spring marathon ambitions. Tirunesh Dibaba, for example, spring marathon ambitions. Now she'd have been right in there loving this, wouldn't she?
Yeah, she would have been, but I think she's very much in the final stages of her preparations for the London Marathon, and this is very much a young Ethiopian team. Kebede, though, could well take that next step up, and another of those girls could well, once they're in a fast race, just make that step forward. Tend to race to win a lot of these girls, so their personal bests may not be a good indication of what they're actually capable of doing, and we could see them take a step forward if the race is laid down and taken out fast as it has been so far.
It's funny that Kebede, the name on her bib, is very different to the names on our start lists and the official documentation that's come out. She is known as Netzanet Gudeta, but her full name is Netzanet Gudeta Kebede. And I know that the statisticians that prepare the information for the media, commentators like ourselves at these championships, so often struggle with the way that the Ethiopian names are come out in different formats. There's Chilemo, and that stride length has gone. She looks to have really almost hit a wall, Paula, because that gap has opened up quite markedly over the last few minutes to this lead pack, where Jep Koski is just continuing and insisting on keeping her nose in front. So there's no sense of tucking in for her, is there? And do you think that's because she wants to impose not only her physical presence on the pack and maintain a very healthy tempo up front, but psychologically it says something too?
Yeah, I think it does. And I think even the way that she runs, the manner that she looks around as she just did then and controls the field, she's almost reminiscent of a boxer rather than a runner. And she kind of likes to fight in the races and really take it to the other athletes and to make them hurt. You can see already her head's kind of nodding a little bit. Not that I can really make any judgment on that, but she's really fighting with each stride, but also at the same time efficient in the way that she runs, and she likes to turn the screw and test people. And without a doubt, that result in rack would have hurt her ego, would have hurt her confidence, and she wants to rebound from that with a strong run. She knows the streets of Valencia. She's run very fast here before, and she probably wasn't too happy to see the win, but just thought, well, okay, I'm going to get out there and make everybody hurt in the conditions today.
Well, all 5 Ethiopians are up in that leading group, but I think they're just beginning to feel the pain as we look down on the City of Arts and Sciences. Now the men's race, it's just a couple of minutes away. Zasne Tedesse holds the world record at 58.23. That was set back in 2010. And of course, for this next, it does mean for this next 40 minutes or so, the men and women will be running simultaneously. The men, of course, starting in the same place as the ladies, up on the bridge. Probably one of the highest points in the city, actually. That's why they do it there, and also they start there, and it means that the overall profile of the race does incorporate a fairly substantial drop. I know that the
I think it's about 17 metres, maybe?
It is. The start is, the finish is at about 3 metres above sea level, and the start is at something like 17 metres above sea level. Well, Valencia is a city of some 800,000 people, and in the larger urban area, about 1.5 million, and plenty of them will be coming out onto the roads to support their Spanish names. One of them, Ayad Lamdasem, fresh from winning the Spanish cross-country title, twice European cross-country championship silver medalist. Abraham Chereben of Bahrain, number 3 all-time, very much one of the favourites, although his championship record is not great. Julian Bunders, one of the European road sensations of this winter, took second at Barcelona with the Swiss national record 60.09 a few weeks back. Yoron Okombo, just 20 years old, number 9 all-time, ran 58.48 when second at RAC. Kamwaro, the twice champion, going for the hat-trick today, the defending champion. More of him later. There's Yima, the Ethiopian, second in the RAC half marathon. Lil Gebreselassie of Ethiopia, world number 2 at the marathon this year in Dubai, the second fastest ever debut of 2:04. And Aaron Kifle we saw just then, who was in the World Cross Country last year, just 20, but huge potential 7th in the World Championships 10,000 last year. And away they go, the men. Not a great deal of countdown for that one, unlike the case for the ladies. And this big field, 160 men from 71 nations, pours across the bridge in front of good crowds. Now, once they have passed the athletes, and of course there's the mass race behind, some almost 15,000 involved in that, the crowds will spread out around the course and support the athletes as and where they can. I was talking to a friend yesterday who's got an athlete running, and he said he's worked out 7 places on this course, this anti-clockwise course, where he thinks he can get to and watch his athlete go by. It's fabulous for spectators. The hemispheric looks like is designed to look like an eye, apparently. You can see why, can't you? Well, they love their running here, and of course they get to do it for about 10 or 11 months in glorious sunshine. Paula, you live in Monte Carlo, so you're probably a bit more used to it than those of us who live up in northern Europe.
Yeah, there was a few people today saying, oh, it's cold, and we're sitting here thinking it's not really that cold considering conditions that you might be getting in Northern Europe. But certainly a city that likes to get out and get active, and I think the riverbed that they've transformed so beautifully as they have is really capitalised on by the amount of people out there running regularly in there, and a lot of people also on bikes. I think many people have chosen that method to get around the course. I know Sonia O'Sullivan is out there on a bike now trying to get to different points on the course and be able to encourage team members.
Julian Bunders there of Switzerland. I mentioned him in that original introduction, the 22-year-old who has run 60.09 this year as new Swiss national record, in fabulous form and clearly on top of his game, oozing confidence to go to the front in a field of this calibre. And there is that mass field pouring through the line, and they'll be doing that for quite a time if there are anything like 15,000 of them. Spain, of course, with a rich tradition in distance running. We can go back to the women's race, though. 27 minutes on the clock. They're spread across the road here. That would suggest, Paula, they're certainly not running into a strong wind here.
Yeah, when they're more in single file formation, then it would suggest that there's a bit stronger a wind. We can also see that the pack has whittled down quite considerably, and there's I make it 6 in there now, and so that screw has obviously continued to be turned by Jeb Koski, and it's starting to give her some good rewards as she sees that group get smaller and smaller. That will cause her confidence to grow. Well,
Gudeta, we just saw the drop out of shot. She's had to pull back away from this group. Zinash Mekonnen is feeling the pain as well. Only 21 years old. She's got a personal best of just 71.27. Now, I know that was done in Ethiopia at altitude, but nonetheless, they're sending athletes here, the Ethiopian Federation, who are very, very inexperienced, might be a little bit overawed by the occasion. Having said that, the commentator's curse might go all inverse and she'll win the race. But anyway, well before halfway, she's looking okay. But these are big moments for young athletes like that in their first ever major championship.
Yeah, but I think you have to learn at some point, and to get the experience or the opportunity to come and take part in a World Half Marathon Championships, and to learn from that and to build on that, it can only help, and you can only become a better athlete by putting yourself into these races and learning.
Well, this is the chasing group, the chasing quintet. You can see extreme left of picture. Looks like about 60 or 70 metres up the road is the leading pack as they go through 9 kilometres in around 28:41. That's unofficial, that's just my eyesight giving you that, so it's probably totally unreliable. But now we're back in shot with that leading quintet, is it? And they are flying. Maybe the wind behind them at this part of the course, but the difference between the tempo they seem to be laying down here with that picture we had just now of the second group is quite marked.
Yeah, it's marked, so I would suggest that does indicate that they may be not into a headwind, but also that the pace has significantly picked up. So it's not that group, the second group, has slowed down. They've just not been able to respond to the surge that has been put in place by Gudeta as well as Jeb Koski at this point.
Well, Eunice Chumba at the back of the group for Bahrain. There are 5 in this lead group now. Belete is there, Meseret Belete, just 18 years old, Belete, and she's up in this leading group of 5. Her best time 70 minutes 35. At the moment, she's on tempo to break that by something like 4.5 minutes. It's astonishing. Now, you know, the only thing we've got to remember is that these young Ethiopians, Paula, might have relatively modest times on paper, but if those were done at 7,000 feet or 8,000 feet up in Addis Ababa, well, you can lop several minutes off it, can't you, to get the sea level equivalent?
Yeah, you can lop more than a couple of minutes off it, depending on the conditions that it was run in at altitude as well. But very often some of these races are very, very hilly as well as being high at altitude, and when you hit the hills combined with altitude, that makes it very, very hard. And I think we would, as sea level born athletes, would really struggle to even be able to go and complete the race at that height.
Well, good crowds through this section of the course. Of course, it's dead flat as it has been pretty much all the way. There have been one or two very slight descents down off the bridge near the start, but it's dead flat, good crowds. The wind doesn't seem to be troubling them. A mixture of dark grey cloud and blue sky above them. And as they approach halfway, this lead pack of 5 might well be breaking down to a 3 and a 2. There's the damage done behind. We're seeing a shot of the chasing group, the third group in effect, of 5 athletes, 6 athletes close together. Yima is an athlete who ran so well earlier in the year, but looks to be struggling now, back in, 6th place in isolation. And that's tough, isn't it? When you're between two groups, having to lay down a tempo yourself, it's always very, very hard.
Yeah, it's tough. She has the decision of either to drop back and run with the group behind her, or to keep working away, and it's tantalising. It's not like it's a huge gap that she couldn't work to make up, so she will keep reaching a little bit to be able to latch onto the back of that group, but unfortunately I don't think she's going to be able to do that. As we look now, and that's the second Ethiopian athlete also starting to drop off the back, and they go through 10 kilometres in 31:39, so a little bit slower through that kilometre, but probably due to the wind that they've faced for a lot of this section.
Well, they've covered that second 5 kilometres in exactly 16 minutes. The first 5K was 15:39. Hence that 10 kilometres time of 31:39. So it's a lot slower than the world record pace that Jeb Koski managed twice last year. But here we are. Yes, we are down to 4, and in fact 3, because Chumba seems to be easing back away from this quintet. Kibede, Jeb Koski, and I think it's Kamulu, the third one there to the right of picture, who's got a very busy running style, hasn't she? Much shorter stride. I mean, she's probably taking 3 strides for every 2 of Jeb Koski.
The women's elite group has just passed through 10 kilometres. The unofficial, or rather the official time.
Back now to, is it 2 more of the European athletes, an Italian athlete, looks like, followed by Fabiana Schlumpf of Switzerland. I don't know if that is Gebre further back down the road behind, or if she is ahead. She was running with Schlumpf earlier, and is the leading Spanish athlete. Can we see? No, is it Gebre?
Yes, it is, yeah. And that's Schlumpf, by the way, the national record holder for Switzerland, who went through, set that time of 70:17 last year. And it gives you an idea of the standard they're running at, the speed at the front, when you've got good quality, world-class athletes, absolutely spread-eagled in the wake of the top Kenyans and Ethiopians. Bobachel, very experienced Romanian, going through with Golish of Canada tucked in behind her. And the Japanese, who are so strong at the marathon, just don't quite have the same ability at the half marathon. There's Purdue of Great Britain leading a little pack of 8 through. Must be into the wind at this section because they're tucked in behind her in single file. But they've gone through a 10K, well, about a minute down and maybe more from Kibede, Jeb Koski and Kamulu, with Chumba in 4th place, Belete in 5th, a couple of seconds down, and then another 10 or 11 seconds back to Yima and Mekkonen. Mekkonen further 10 seconds back in 7th place. So the official time, in fact, 31:38 at 10K, so it's 15:59. And then we're seeing on our screens coming up some of the names of athletes slightly further back.
Just an apology to the Israeli athlete. She's not Italian, she's Israeli, and she's having a very, very good run. She's the leading European with Fabiana Schlumpf. That's Salpeter.
Well, we can go back to the men now. And it's Muriyama at the front for Japan.
She's in
The Japanese, of course, with, again, on the men's side,
And it's quite a long way
strong
back.
marathon runners, not quite so strong at the half marathon. Koto Murayama is a 62-minute half marathon runner. He's just taken the lead from Julian Bunders of Switzerland. That was a European under-23 record Bunders set, by the way, as well as a national record for the Swiss. But what do you think is going through the mind of Murayama here, out in front with a pack of what? 50, 70 world-class athletes, many of whom much faster than him, just on his shoulder almost. It's a bizarre shot.
I think he's just decided that obviously the pace wasn't quick. You can see that by the scale of the group and the numbers in that group behind him. And he's decided that his best chance in this race is to make it a quicker run race. If it stays as a pack and they run slowly and then pick up only in the closing stages, he won't finish as highly. So he's just decided to get the pace moving a little bit. I'd be surprised if we see him, as we look back to Florian Cavallo of France, I'd be surprised if we see Murayama leading for too long. I think he just wants to get the pace ticking along a bit more and start to have other people come by and take turns at the front, and just to keep it moving in a better rhythm.
Couldn't be more different to the women's race, where within 5 minutes we were down to a pack of about 10 or 12, maybe 14. 11 minutes on the clock in the men's race now, and there's a huge pack tucked in behind Murayama and Bunders and Cavallo of France. Galante, one of the South Africans. Quite a useful squad the South Africans have got here. Stephen Makoka, probably the best known of theirs, man who's won some very big road races in the UK in particular. A quick 10-miler is Makoka. Just as on the the women's side, though, the best Europeans are, the vast majority of them are several minutes slower than the best of East Africa. Kamworo, by the way, the favourite. We haven't really seen him yet since the gun, but he is going for his third consecutive title. Hasn't run a half marathon since his win in Cardiff 2 years ago. And indeed, Cardiff was his only one for a year and a half. So he's run one half marathon in the last 3.5 years as Jeffrey Kamworo. He's run plenty of great championship races since then, including a brace of cross-country titles, world cross-country titles. But he races sparingly. He really picks and chooses his races, as we're seeing now a shot from behind of the stragglers, I should say, athletes who have just been, again, dropped very early on in this men's race, by quite some distance too, which would suggest that that big pack up in front is moving at a pretty solid tempo, if not anything close to world record speed. Well, the women's race is unfolding almost like a race-walking race, in that there are no prisoners being taken. They've gone out very hard from the start. Race walkers, as a totally different discipline, of course, tend to go very hard from the gun in championships, and I admire them for that. They take very few prisoners, and that's the case in the women's race. This men's race, despite the fact we're seeing quite a few athletes who have dropped off after, 13 minutes, has got a big pack out in front.
Yeah, they're definitely not as keen to take it on. Maybe it's partly the women just wanted to go after that time and really felt that they still had a chance, even in the windy conditions, to attack that 66:25 time. Whereas on the men's side, given these conditions, probably getting close to the world record isn't a possibility today. So then it becomes much more about racing, and there are people in there who really want to win this race, and they don't care if they win it in 63 minutes or if they win it in 58 minutes. So they're just going to wait and let the race unfold a bit and be patient, and it's going to come down to other people to get the pace moving early on. Sam Chalanga, maybe Lambda Sam, will actually start to get the pace moving a little bit now as he gets support from the crowd.
You can see Sam Chalanga of the USA there in that blue strip. Chalanga, 33 years old now, very experienced. Former Kenyan, has followed in the footsteps of the likes of Bernard Lagat, really. But Lagat, though, some 9 years or so older. Went to the US in 2006 on a scholarship arranged by the great Paul Tergat, the 5-time world cross-country champion from Kenya. But again, very spread across the road here, Paula. It would suggest that this pack of, 50, at least 50, are not running into the wind at the moment. 14:31 at 5 kilometres in this men's race. 14:31.
World Half Marathon Championships in Valencia 2018.
You can see still a very, very big pack and not huge gaps opening up behind either. So it's not startlingly quick, but it's still sort of 61.5-minute pace.
Yeah, 61.20, something like that. That would suggest to me that it is going to be a tactical affair. I mean, so often in the really big half marathons, the leaders can go out in around 28 minutes or quicker. Well, 14:31 tells me that they're going to be going through halfway and not that far inside, 10K, and not that far inside 29 minutes. We'll make it a tactical affair, and that probably plays into the hands of the likes of Camel or Paula, who has such amazing track speed.
Yeah, he has that track speed, and he also has that ability to think quickly and to adapt his tactics to what's happening in the race around him. So I think it will play to that. I think at some point he might want it to start getting a little bit harder. We know from the women's race and from the pace that they went, even though they appeared to have run faster in the second 5 kilometres, it was actually slower than the first. So conditions are going to be tougher now going into this next 5 kilometres for the men too.
Well, there you can see the mat at 5 kilometres, the timing mat. These groups going through in just inside 16 minutes. But what is interesting is that we've seen that front end of the men's field several times, and you know what's conspicuous by its absence there is a big presence from the East Africans. Camel in 9th place, but it's not like it's dominated by the Ethiopians or the Kenyans or the Ugandans or the names we'd expect to be up there. So there seems to have been a sort of message gone around those teams that they will sit back for the first half and gauge the wind conditions and then maybe make it a very interesting second half. I expect a substantial negative splits here, much quicker second half today.
Yeah, I definitely think we're going to see the real racing start in the second half of this race, and a lot of the key protagonists in the race are just keeping their powder dry through this first section.
Well, here's that lead quartet in the women's race. Kebede is still attacking and running very aggressively, and she's a youngster, is Kebede. I mean, goodness me, this is a surprise.
Pretty clear that the wind is
I say a youngster, she's 27.
At 5 kilometres for
Ran that personal best in Delhi last November. 67.26 Kebede, but she's moving at a quicker tempo here. It'll be interesting to see their 15-kilometre split, whether or not they've maintained the tempo through this third 5-kilometre section. But she is a good track runner. She's run just outside 30 minutes 30 for 10 kilometres, and you know how strong anything under 31 minutes is, Paula, for 10,000 metres. And she's got good strength as well, not only good track speed, but good strength. She's a 2:29 marathon runner, and that's, anything under 2:30 is world class.
Yeah, but those times will indicate that maybe her best distance actually lies at something like the half marathon, because certainly the 30:36 that she's run for 10,000 metres and the 2:29 don't really correlate. She's closer to being a better class athlete over 10,000 metres, and so is maybe finding her distance over the half marathon, and she's not afraid either. She's not intimidated by Julian Koski and what she's run. She's quite happy to take it to her and to shoulder her share of the leading and the pushing on of the pace in this race.
Well, we saw a shot just now, Chepngetich, about 50 metres behind this quintet. This is a chasing group. I think this is the second group. Mekonnen is there for Ethiopia, and then our camera roars up to the athletes ahead, although they too are isolated on the road. So that was a chasing pack, but it wasn't the second pack. Here is Yima for Ethiopia. So it's all coming a little unstuck for this young Ethiopian squad, because while they looked fine about 10 or 15 minutes ago, there's Balete. They have certainly felt the pace, or felt the pain, I should say, through this third quarter. Balete, just 18 years old, isolated. She's got about 25 minutes of running to come, maybe more. Still looks to be running quite strongly, but it is so much tougher when you're on your own. And here is Chumba in 4th place, now about 20 metres down the Bahraini from this leading trio. Interesting, Paula, isn't it, that Jet Koski is tucked in 3rd place. Now, a metre or so, a couple of metres down from the leader, Kebede, who for all intents and purposes, seems to be calling the shots. I mean, it's astonishing.
Yeah, she's dominating the race. Eunice Chumba behind manages to work herself back almost into contact with the leading three and then drops back again. I guess we're in a windy section again by the way that they're running in single file. And Jeb Koski, at first I thought maybe she's just slotting in to get some shelter and some respite from the wind, but that's a definite gap opening up now, and you don't want to allow that to open up without having any choice in the matter. So I would say that she's starting to fatigue a little bit.
Well, this could be the key moment of the race for Joycelyn Jepkosgei, the world record holder. At 44 minutes on the clock, nearly 45 minutes on the clock, is losing ground on the two athletes she's been running with for the last 10 or 15 minutes. She's 5 or 7 meters down now, in third place. They're running single file. Kebede of Ethiopia is beginning to turn the screw. Netzanet Kebede, who was 6th in 2014 in Gothenburg, 4th 2 years ago in Cardiff, just outside the medals, although the individual medals, though she led the Ethiopian team to silver. And she now is really turning the screw. Kamulu, one of the lesser-known lights of the Kenyan squad. Indeed, there are only 3 of them. The 23-year-old Pauline Kamulu in second place has been dragged clear of Joycelyn Jepkosgei. And the damage has been done here by Kebede, who seems to be getting quicker all the time. 3:11, the average pace to this point in the race. So it has slowed a little from early on.
It has, but when you factor in that a big proportion of that middle section has been into a headwind, you can see the damage that it's done. But also in this shot, you can see the inexperience in a way of Kebede, because the blue line marking the shortest line on this course is far away on the right-hand side of the course and out of our shot behind. That's the line that Jepkosgei is running on. So she's actually just run a shorter section of the course around that bend, because Kamula is just in her trying to hang on to the back of Kebede. She has just followed the longer line that Kebede has taken, who in turn is trying to get a little bit of shelter maybe from the lead vehicle in front and trying to just use that in some way just to get a little bit of rest in the windy sections. But she's doing huge damage to the runners behind her, and she looks really strong.
Well, she looks like she's got a tailwind all the time. She's got a slight forward lean to her stride. She's powerfully built in the legs, is Kebede, and she is pouring it on here. And I suspect, I don't know, but I suspect she's aware that she's got this gap in Jepkosgei. I haven't seen her glance around. Maybe she's getting shouts from team management on the sidelines, but she has been accelerating all the time over this last 3 or 4 minutes. And the gap now back to Joycelyn Jepkosgei has grown. There's Chumba in 4th place. She's in isolation, although she's now got Jepkosgei in her sights, about 50 or 60 meters ahead. This was not expected. There will be people here, locals, and there will be people who are watching this who have seen Jepkosgei break the world record here last October with their mouths open and aghast in surprise that she is being beaten. At the moment, I hasten to add, with what, about 20 minutes of running to go. Little glance over her shoulder there, Paula, and that's always a bit of a giveaway. She's feeling it, isn't she? Yeah, she's definitely feeling it. She's not the type of athlete who would intentionally allow this gap to open up. And 15:53 for that 5 kilometre split to 15 kilometres. So that's picked up again, not markedly. It's only 7 seconds, but as I say, into a section that has been a harder and a tougher section to race as well. And you can see how much of a surge that's been by the damage that it's done to the women around her. And Kebede, she must be feeling tired, but she looks very strong, very relaxed, very focused. She's looking slightly over her shoulder when she turns corners just to get an indication of what's happening behind her, but she's not looking over her shoulder in a way that indicates that she's worried and that would give the others chasing her ammunition to work back to her. So are we looking at the next World Half Marathon champion? Kenyans have lifted this title on 4 out of the last 5 occasions. But the unheralded, relatively unheralded, Netzanet Gudeta, she's a 67-26 athlete. That was last year. Is now in control. Here comes some of the chasing athletes. Yima, Belete in 5th and 6th for Ethiopia. And then Mekanen. And Gudeta is there as well. Mokonin for Bahrain. Some of the glorious structures of the city of Valencia being passed now at great speed. by Joycelyn Koski. The trouble is her great speed is not as great as that of the two athletes out in front of her, although she is closing down on Kamulu in second place. Kebede looks to be gone. She's probably 50 metres ahead of Kamulu, who in turn is about 30 metres ahead of Koski. But Koski has definitely got her in her sights. Good crowds on this part of the course. Again, dead flat. You almost feel like there's a slight descent to this section. I wonder if Kamulu is aware that Koski is hunting her.
I think at this stage she's trying to hang on. All three of them are running on their own in these conditions and just trying to fight and focus on that until Koski gets closer to her, or if she gets closer to her. I don't think Kamulu will be aware that she's there, but she's just focusing very much on the vest of Kebede in front and trying to maintain her form and maintain her strength over this final 5 kilometre section of the race. But Koski, certainly from that angle, it looked as though she was closing. It's difficult to tell because the camera sometimes can foreshorten those gaps a little bit.
Well, the last time an Ethiopian lifted this title, it was Meseret Haile in 2012. And prior to that, you have to go back to 2002 for Burhan Adere, the great track runner that you've clashed with many times, Paula, who won in 2002 in 69.06. That says a great deal, doesn't it? But this will be only the third time an Ethiopian has won in the women's race. And in the men's race now, things are beginning to hot up a little bit. We go back to the men's race for the first time in quite a while. And surprise, surprise, Kenyan vets rising to the top with 25 minutes gone like cream to the top of the milk. They will be going through halfway in the next 5 minutes or so. There's that flag, Paula, on the music palace, the Palau de la Musica. Gives us a very clear indication of the strength of the wind. It's sticking out there quite stiffly, isn't it? We think it's coming from the northwest as we see that men's pack passing it.
Yeah, certainly from that angle that would indicate that they're now running into the wind, although they are still spread out across the road, and I think being alongside the taller buildings does give them a little bit of shelter from that wind. This drained riverbed that the finish is in almost acts as a little bit of a wind tunnel, and the wind does come into here and kind of whistle through here, but they will have it at their backs as they finish, but that doesn't help much at this stage in the race.
Well, they've run the first few miles, first few kilometres of this race so conservatively, the men, that we've got a big pack with nearly half an hour on the clock. Remember, they went through 5k in an extremely modest 14:31. Now that means they were moving, I don't know, what's your maths like, 2:55 per kilometre, something like that?
I think so, yeah.
And world record tempo is many. Oh, there's a faller! Was that Kamwaro? Wow.
No, it's not Kamwaro.
One of the Kenyans went down right in the middle of this pack, and that's partly, I think, a response to the fact that Özbilen, a former Kenyan, ironically, for Turkey, has hit the front and started to accelerate. He's opened up a bit of a gap really quickly, and that might have caused a little bit of panic in the pack.
Yeah, it does, and it's particularly when you have a big pack like that, and somebody sees someone react, and everybody tries to respond and be able to go with that. But they don't always think about where they're placing their trail leg behind them, and people just trip over each other. And the athlete went down was definitely a Kenyan athlete. I'm trying to work out which one. I don't think it's a combo. He's still there. It's not Kamwaro. Wait and see whether they manage to work their way back as cleverly as we saw Kamwaro do after a fall much earlier on in the race in Cardiff 2 years ago. But he was able to work back very cleverly back up to the lead group, and the thing when you get back up is A, not to be hurt too badly, but B, not to work too hard. Is that rain out there, or is that water blowing from the fountains?
No, it is rain. I mean, you can see, look at those clouds up above the city of Valencia. It's pretty grey and getting darker above us here at the finish line in the Arts and Science City, but this is Kebede in the women's race. Crowds roaring her on as she goes through Plaza de la Reina. And there could be a real turn-up here. One of those rare shocks at this IAAF Trinidad Alfonso World Half Marathon Championship Valencia 2018, as this women's race reaches a climax. So Kebede goes through. Behind her in second place, Kamulu. And where is Koski? That what we thought was a slight comeback by Koski looks to have evaporated somewhat. They go through 17 kilometers there, Kamulu does, but she's lost sight of Kebede now, who has absolutely been on fire this last 10 minutes or so. Here's the leader, and the camera lens we're looking through, in case you're listening without a picture, is covered in rain. This was not predicted. Winds were, not actual precipitation. Goodness me. Don't think it happens too often around here at any time of year. But she looks strong, doesn't she? She's got a lovely, long stride, confident stride.
Yeah, she's a confident runner. She's got a nice, relaxed arm swing that isn't using too much energy. And she looks like the type of athlete who can progress from this and build up to she should be able to run a much quicker marathon than she has done.
Well, we're getting spots of rain here in our commentary position by the finish line, so that rain is spreading across the city. And Kebede, there are her splits, 15:39, 15:59, 15:52 for the 3 5K sections they've negotiated so far. And surely this final one will be quicker still. 47:30 at 15 kilometers. The wind, the rain is increasing all the time, and in fact now it's pouring down here near the finish line. And I made a joke earlier about the rain in Cardiff 2 years ago. Well, my apologies to all those of you with any Welsh connections whatsoever, because this is almost a photocopy of the conditions in Cardiff, albeit it's come late in the race here.
It's going to be gone in 2 seconds. It's blowing straight through, and there's blue sky and sun behind it.
You're confident, are you, Paula? Well, you live in the Med, so you should know. Kamulu, though, in second place. There are her splits. 47:34 she was at 15k. That means with 6 kilometers to go, she was only 4 seconds down.
And that gap has definitely grown. It's more than 4 seconds now. She can sometimes, when she gets a longer, straighter section, still see Kebede ahead of her. But a lot of the time in the twistier sections, she is working on her own and just trying to work as hard as she can to the finish.
Well, who would have thought we'd have seen Jeb Koski beaten so soundly today? I say that with, about 10 minutes of running to go. I just cannot see her coming back unless she's toying with the opposition. But I don't think it's one of those days at the races for the world record holder. 2 big names withdrew, remember, from the Kenyan squad. Fancy Chemutai and Mary Rasira. And their federation must have thought, well, don't worry, we've got Joyceline out there. Joyceline kept Jeb Koski, our banker, our world record holder, the athlete who will retain the title for us. But that does not appear to be the case, as Kebede strides on through one of the shopping districts in the centre of town. The crowd behind the railings roaring her on. She's enjoying this. A little glance over her shoulder there. That's one of the first times I've seen her do that. But the signal she will have got back, as we see an average tempo of 3:10. She has accelerated over the last 10 minutes or so. The message she will have got back from that glance over her shoulder was all the good news she needed, and that will have given her that extra little surge of adrenaline too, Paula. I always felt that, it didn't happen very often to me though, but if I was going well in the race and you looked over your shoulder and you saw a gap, it gave you such enormous reinforcement.
It does, particularly when you put a hard effort in to be able to break away, and then to look over your shoulder and see that the work you've done has done what you intended it to do, and you have that cushion, then can give you extra impetus and extra energy to keep working harder into the finish.
Is that Jeb Koski being closed down? There's Kamulu about 30 metres ahead of Jeb Koski, so she's held a position well, Jeb Koski. She hasn't really lost much ground on this second placer, but somebody is closing up on Jeb Koski very quickly, and I can't see who it is. We didn't get a good shot of it.
I think it's Eunice Chumba. She was never really out of it, and she seems to be able to have been able to work her way back to Jeb Koski, and we'll see when she does that, if she manages to get alongside her. Does she go straight past her, or does she tuck in for a little bit and then make it a race for the bronze medal?
Puerta del Mar Square, negotiated there by the leader, net-to-net Gudeta Kebede of Ethiopia. Surely she has the title in the bag now. It's not close. The gap behind her. Well, the camera pans backwards from this aerial shot to try and catch the second placer come through, but it's a big gap. She's got a lead of maybe 150, 200 meters now by the looks of things. There is Kamulu coming through. Yeah, it's probably about 150 meters. I would say 20 seconds plus.
Yeah, and Kamula looks a lot more tired than she did the last time that we looked at her. So I think we are seeing her really start to pay the price for having tried to go with Gudeta for as long as she did. And will she now come under threat from the two chasing behind her?
Well, Kamulu doesn't have great track speed. She's got a best at 5,000 meters of 14:58, but that's some way off the really best in the world. There's very little on her CV, it has to be said. A couple of years ago, she was 7th in the African Cross-Country Championships, and she's suffering at the moment in 2nd place behind this unrelenting form of Netzanet Gudeta. We know she's got good strength from her marathon best of 2:29. We know she's got wonderful track speed as a 30:36 10,000 meter runner. She was 3rd in the World Cross Country 3 years back in China.
Positions are getting close around 2nd, 3rd and 4th.
And now Jep Koski closing up on Kamulu and Chumba, as you mentioned correctly, Paula, being closed down. Eunice Chumba closing down on Jep Koski. The only athlete who's really enjoying her day out in Valencia is the leader, the out-and-out leader, Gudeta. She was the first non-Kenyan finisher at the last 2 World Half Marathon Championships, in 4th place in 2016, in 6th place in 2014. Well, she might have missed the medals by tiny margins on each of those last 2 occasions, but today, surely she's going to finish very much amongst the medals and pretty much on top of the pile. Jep Koski closing on Kamulu, a target to aim at. That's always good, isn't it? When you're in a distance race and you're hurting, you can focus on something other than your own pain, your own discomfort.
Yeah, you can focus on whittling down that gap just step by step, and each stride that you take that gets you a little bit closer, that then gives you a little bit more confidence to be able to work on and to build on that. But I tell you what, Tim, Gudeta knows the time that she's aiming for, and she's checking her watch now for the first time really in the race. In this final 3 kilometers, she's been checking it regularly, and I think she's well aware of that 66:25, and she is still within reach of being able to get that.
Well, just to remind you that the women's only world record is slower, of course, than the mixed race world record. And the women's only world record, 66:25, is what she's aiming at. It's lasted for what, 11 years?
Yeah, 2007 in Udine.
Jep Koski almost now back in contact with 2nd place Kamulu. The gap is closing with every stride. I think Jep Koski, if this was any kind of a finishing surge, has left it way too late. Gudeta's gone. She's we can just see her at the top of our screens, a tiny dot in that yellow Ethiopian vest in the distance, but she's certainly 150 meters, maybe more, in front of Kamulu, who is in turn about just 5 meters ahead of her teammate, Jep Koski. So Kenyans in 2nd and 3rd behind that Ethiopian vest of Gudeta. And then the Bahraini Eunice Chumba in 4th place. I'd like to see a shot of how close Chumba is to Jep Koski, because she in turn in 4th has got a target and the incentive of trying to get amongst the medals, and that's a big help.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing a pretty much clear gold medal runaway here, but behind that, the race for the silver and the bronze medals is very much still to play for. And I think from the look over her shoulder that Jep Koski keeps throwing, she knows that Eunice Chumba is behind her, and she also knows that she's closing in on Kamula. So will they run together for a little bit, or will she just go straight past her and just make sure that she keeps turning the screw and keeps moving away from Eunice Chumba behind?
Well, Lorna Kiplagat, when she set the women-only world record in 2007 in 66:25, 15:23, by the way, for that 5-kilometer segment, 15:23. That is the quickest of the race so far by quite some margin. And that really does underline the fabulous form of Gudeta through these last 3 or 4 miles, the last 6 or 7 kilometers, where she has just torn the heart out of the rest of this field, destroyed them, never gave them a sniff of getting back to her. It's been absolutely fabulous. And as she comes towards the finish zone now, she will very soon be in sight of the finish. 64 minutes on the clock. Remember that time she's aiming for, the women-only world record here in Valencia, and what a reward it would be for the fabulous organisation we've seen and the fabulous work of all the volunteers here in the city. Back in 2007, 66-25, when Lorna Kiplagat took the second of her 3 consecutive titles. She could go under 66 minutes here. Jeb Koski has passed Kamulu. Good timing from her. If you can't win, then the silver is the next best thing. But in 2007, the championships was in Udine, Italy, in a gloriously fast, flat course on the coast. Well, here it's been similar conditions, and it's been enjoyed by none more than it has been by Kebede. Netzanet Gudeta Kebede of Ethiopia is heading for the biggest win of her life. Grey clouds above us, mixed with blue sky, probably about 50-50. But this is a race now between 2 compatriots. We didn't expect this, not so far behind a runaway winner.
No, we didn't expect this, and Jeb Koski has worked hard to get herself back into that silver medal position. You can see in their 5-kilometre splits, they've run 15:59 for Kamula and 15:55 for Jeb Koski. So that's why Jeb Koski has managed to work her way back, and that's also why with the 15:23, Kebede has been able to move so convincingly away, and she can see her target ahead of her. She knows the building that she's aiming for. It's a beautiful finish that they've structured here to this race, and she's going to be able to really enjoy that. And can she get under that 66 minutes?
Well, hard to tell. She's almost inside of us here by the finish line. The glorious isolation of the long-distance runner, the loneliness of the long-distance runner. Well, it's a long-distance winner today, and the long distance with 200 metres to run, she's got about 30 seconds to get under 66 minutes. I don't think she's going to do that, but we are witnessing, ladies and gentlemen, a world record on the streets of Valencia today in a women's-only half marathon, and it makes a huge difference having males around you, pacemaking, competition alongside you the whole way. She has been in isolation for the second half of this race, certainly the last 20 or 25 minutes, and she's into the home straight now in this glorious city of the arts and the sciences. Kebede is going to be world champion here. Look at her form as she comes towards the line. This IAAF Trinidad Alfonso World Half Marathon Championship, Valencia 2018, goes to Ethiopia in the women's race. Netzanet Kebede wins there unofficially in around 66.12. Jeb Koski is really hurting here. The grimace all too apparent as she just takes that last left turn onto the home straight and onto the blue matting down between the lakes that cover so much of the city of arts and sciences. 66.23, the winning time for Kebede. Brilliant stuff from the Ethiopian, and still good running this from Joycelyn Jeb Koski to take the silver medley, with Kamulu, her teammate from Kenya, only about 20 metres back. She crosses the line unofficially in 66.53, and Kamulu there in about 66.56. A couple of seconds down, 2 or 3 seconds down. But Ethiopia get the top spot today. And Kebede, well, what a special run it is from her. 66.11.
We've seen 2 different times come up. We've seen the 66.23, but she actually crossed the line the way I was looking at the clock, and 66.11, and that's what's come up on our monitors.
Well, if that is the case, then it's very, very different to what is on our screen. So apologies for that slight confusion. 66.11 indeed. Paula's quite right. A women-only world record is on our computers, but on the screen a time fully 12 seconds different. That will be sorted out very promptly, I'm sure. The organisation of this event in every respect so far prior to this has been absolutely superb, and now it is official. 66.11 for Kebede. Jeb Koski the silver for Ethiopia, for Kenya behind the Ethiopian. Kamulu the bronze, and now the minor places being battled out, and 68 minutes there is still great running. Chumba did take 4th place, Yima 5th, Belete 6th, Mokonin 7th for Bahrain, Gudeta of Ethiopia 8th. So all those young Ethiopians, well, they've hung on pretty well, placing in the top 10. It's been a bit of a baptism of fire for them, with now 68.5 minutes just coming up on the clock. Gudeta, Abdul Kadir goes through for Bahrain, Eshete for Bahrain. But there is the lady of the moment. And Paula, it was one of the most dominant wins we've seen in these championships for many a year.
It was, and a big step up for this young lady who's really underlined her talent as a half marathon runner, and she can really move on from this and I think run faster over the half marathon distance, because conditions today, let's face it, she's run a women's only world record in conditions that are very tough out there.
Well, she's won here today by no less than 43 seconds. She destroyed the field over the second half of the race and is a very worthy winner. Confirmation then of that win for Netsanet Gudeta Kebede of Ethiopia, a world record in a women's only half marathon. No men involved on this occasion. Joycelyn Jep-Koski and Pauline Kaveke Kamulu making it silver and bronze for Kenya. The team race will be tight, although Ethiopia there with 5th and 6th I think have nailed it through Yima and Belete. That is unofficial, of course. Gudeta backing them up well in 8th place. And Chumba, well, unlucky for her, in 4th place, just outside the medals. Well, the sun has broken out here. There was pouring rain just a few minutes ago. And in the team race, Ethiopia, Kenya and Bahrain. There it is. And the margins not that big. 3:22.27 to 3:23.02. What's that? About a 35 seconds difference between the first and second squads. Well, we of course still have fabulous racing unfolding here on the streets of Valencia in that men's competition, and they've been moving now for some 45 minutes. Kamwaro to the fore. This is what we expected. This is what we're used to. The man who every year since 2014 has lifted a world title, alternating cross-country and half marathon. Last year he took a marathon, a cross-country title in Uganda. The year before, of course, stormed to World Half Marathon gold in Cardiff. In 2015, it was World Cross-Country gold on the fields of China. And in 2014, gold in the half marathon on the streets of the Danish capital, Copenhagen. But he looked strong, Paula. Yima and other Ethiopians tucked in behind him, but he is in charge. And they are racing now, however slow the first 5 or 10 kilometers may have been. There's no doubt now that Geoffrey Kamwaro has thrown down the gauntlet and is testing this field. Molla there to the left of picture, one of the two Ethiopians, along with Yima, tucked in behind Kamwaro.
Yeah, Kamwaro seemed to be looking around a little bit concerned. I don't know whether he was trying to spot some of his teammates, and there's not many of them in that pack. There's only Basotum in that lead pack. Okumba was in there. He was just hiding at the back.
Well, these are the splits of 15k. Still quite a big pack, but I think maybe it was going through 15 kilometers, which set the paper alight for Kamwaro. He seems to have almost got an electric shock at that point and has accelerated markedly. And now he is dragging Yima and Molla of Ethiopia away with him. These three, with Cherubin, one of the pre-race favourites, back in 4th place, just beginning to struggle. Doesn't seem to be able to match this acceleration from Kamwaro. Another little glance over his shoulders there. I think he's just trying to check and keep himself informed as to the damage he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't look as though this is a hard effort. It's just a gradual surge, a gradual wind-up, much like we saw from Kebede, and it's reaping its rewards pretty quickly. Yima now is the only one who's really been able to go with him, and he's struggling.
Well, Molla has had to let go. He's back in 3rd place. Yima is now tucked in behind Kamwaro, about 3 meters back. And as he just continues to crank it up, notch by notch, Kamwaro is seeing the resistance fade. Within the space of, about 2 minutes, we've gone from a pack of 4 or 5 down to single file. And Geoffrey Kamwaro, who came here, and almost uncharacteristically for him, Paul, has been quoted in the last couple of days as saying, "I'm fine, I'm in good form, I'm happy to race here, I'm looking forward to it." It was uncharacteristically confident and ebullient in a way from Kamwaro, who's normally a very smiling, gentle character.
Yeah,
and that was a dangerous sign for the opposition.
Maybe it was. I think he's definitely somebody who prefers to let his running do the talking, and he's certainly doing that today. But he did come here very confident, which indicates that he's very happy with the training that he's been able to put in, and that he's very happy with where he's at, and he's been very much focused on getting a good performance, on defending this title and having a very, very strong run in this race today. He didn't panic in the early stages. He didn't feel any need to get that pace moving any quicker than it did do. But now that he has gone to the front, he's quickly stamping his authority on the race and quickly and convincingly moving away with ease from the rest of the field.
Well, this field incorporated or included 12 men who have broken 60 minutes. Only 2 of them this year. But it was a strong lineup in the men's race, in depth, much stronger than the women's. 11 national record holders in this field. But Kwamraw, even though it's been a relatively tactical affair, has blown them apart over this last kilometre. There he turns the corner. In second place is Yima, then Cherben, Kifle. Moller now has dropped back to 5th place as we get this shot behind the athletes in 3rd, 4th and 5th. We've been getting a lot of these shots, and it's nice to see. You get a really good idea of the gaps that have developed and the sight of the racing athlete. It almost puts you into their shoes.
Yeah, no, it does, and you can really appreciate the pace that they're moving at, and just see how quickly those gaps, and that must be really demoralising, to be running as hard as you can and to see Geoffrey Kamworor just moving so easily away from you up the road.
Well, and these are fabulous athletes too. There's Cherben in 3rd place. Now, he's a 58.40 man. I mean, let's not forget, he's the 3rd fastest man in history. On paper, he's quicker than Kamworor. But not today, not so far anyway. 50 minutes on the clock, 50 minutes 30. And Geoffrey Kamworor, with that slight forward lean of his, we're so familiar with it from track championships and cross-country and road. Valencia City Hall being passed by this lead group of men now. I say group, they're strung out in single file. Bunders was there. He must be up there in the top 10, I'm thinking. We'll confirm that for you as soon as we can. Yeah. Osbilen back in 13th place at 15k.
Yeah, 15k, Julian Bunders was in 8th position, so he's the leading European up in that field and having a very, very good run, just ahead of Stephen Makoka of South Africa.
Well, one of the great bull rings of the city there. Not sure if that's Plaza del Torres. Spain play Germany in the Davis Cup in a couple of weeks here in Valencia. Kamworor, though, catching one or two of the back markers with the ladies, even though the men started 25 minutes behind the women. And the crowds here are thick and loud and very supportive of Geoffrey Kamworor. Many of them will know him, I'm sure. This is a man, remember, who has raced the great Mo Farah again and again on the track. Finished 2nd in 2015 at the World Championships over 10,000 metres. Then 5th in the World Championships 10,000 metres last summer, when he didn't have a great year in 2017 on the track, although the place times in London over 10,000 metres were quite supreme. The fastest times for position in that 10,000 metres race. But Kamworor comes here with everything up his sleeve, Paula. He's got a great 5,000, 10,000 metre speed. He's got enormous strength at half marathon, and he won the New York Marathon last November. He's great on the country. I mean, he has got everything. And in the modern era, there are not many athletes who tick all those boxes like Geoffrey Kamworor does. I love the fact that he sticks with the country when the Gebre Selassies and Mo Farahs don't really do cross-country.
No, but maybe that's because they're not as strong as he is over the cross-country. And I think he definitely feels that that is his surface, the road is his surface, the half marathon is his territory. I mean, on the track, he's vulnerable to the likes of Mo Farah, who can maybe just cling on to him and finish faster in the closing stages. But on the roads, it's a different story. On the roads, he can really make it his territory, and cross-country is very similar to that. So he can make people hurt out there. He holds more cards over this surface, and you can see that by the dominance and the way that he's stamping his authority on the rest of the people in this race. The men haven't been able to go with him, and 2:53 for the average kilometre pace doesn't really reflect the way that he's run this race and how hard he's really surged in the middle.
I bet you his average pace over the last 3 or 4K has been a lot quicker than 2:53. That average pace we just saw, by the way, was his average pace since the start of the race. And we know for a fact that they went through 5K in 14:31. 10K they reached in 29:28, so even that was on the slow side. It meant they ran their second 5K, not much inside 15 minutes, these men. Kifle suffering now. This is more like a track race, really, the speed they're closing at. Chereben in third, Yima in fourth, or in fact, has Chereben just moved through to second now, I think. Has caught Yima. Hasn't got Kamoro in his sights, but he has got a silver medal in his sights. Strange running action, too, with that sort of flailing left arm from Abraham Chereben, the 25-year-old from Bahrain. Originally born a Kenyan, began living in Bahrain in August 2015 and got his Bahraini citizenship just a couple of weeks after moving there. Goes through 19 kilometers, does Kamoro, 54:56. He's got, what, 2 kilometers in, say, 5.5 minutes to go. He's going to be possibly just outside 60 minutes. I think 60 minutes is realistic today, and that would have been miraculous considering how slow the first half of this race was. But it doesn't matter, because sometimes it's you get too worried about records being set. We talk in athletics on the track and the roads about records, and you're setting yourself up for disappointment again and again. This has been rather refreshing today to see a tactical race unfold. And the fact we didn't see much of the first half of the race doesn't matter, because the news, folks, is it was very, very slow and there was a massive pack. It was much better to stay with that enthralling women's race in the closing stages.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the race really didn't start till well past 15 kilometres. Those positions that we were giving out at 15 kilometres will have changed enormously, because there was still a pack of 30 or so runners through 15 kilometres, and all of the racing has been done really in the last 6 kilometres of this race.
Well, that foreshortening effect made the gap look behind Kamoro relatively small. It's not massive. I don't think it's closing. There he is in the far distance, just tucked in behind that press truck with a camera on it. Chereben in second place has eased past in that Bahraini vest, has eased past Yima in third.
20 seconds separating first.
Working hard. He's got a strange running style, hasn't he? Slight lean to that head, it leans slightly to the left. Good long stride he's got. The arm action, though, is very unconventional, as indeed it is to Geoffrey Kamoro, really. The arms come up very high against his chest, more like a lot of the Kenyan women, the way he runs with his upper body. But the legs, well, they are going considerably faster, I can assure you. Huge crowds here. They're out, they poured out onto the streets in their thousands, the people of Valencia here today. It's lovely to see. They're running through a tunnel of people, the lead athletes in this men's half marathon championships.
Yeah, it's great to see, and they know they're witnessing something special here. And I think when they see Geoffrey Kamoro running past, and they've already seen a women's world record on the women's side, they're really getting to experience something. And then they probably have friends and family out running in the mass race as well, and they want to be encouraging them on to good performances here today. But just look at the facial expressions of Kamoro in contrast to Chereben, and you can see how much harder Chereben is working. His eyes are almost losing focus. They're trying to focus and to find Geoffrey Kamoro in front of him and to keep working on that. But Geoffrey Kamoro knows he has this. He has it under control. He's working hard, but he's also relaxed at the same time.
Well, he looks to be heading for title number 3 and the hat-trick to Geoffrey Kamoro. The only athlete who's ever won more than 2 titles consecutively was Ersne Tadesse of Eritrea, the world record holder, who lifted 4 consecutive titles in 2006, 2007, 2008 and 2009. And of course you could argue it's a little bit easier to get consecutive titles when they come at you every year. Remember, this is a biannual championships now. It's only every 2 years. Kamoro dominant from 2014 to 2018. That is some span. 5 years of dominance at the half marathon. And every reason to believe he'll go very quick this year as well.
13:01, that 5 kilometre split has come up on my computer. Now either they've got the wind very, very much behind them, but he's certainly flying and moving very, very quickly, as are the others behind him as well. 13:14 for Chereben and 13:24 for Kifle.
Well, that, if it's even remotely accurate, is one of the most astonishing statistics I've ever seen in a road race. He's just run the 5K, between 15K and 20K as Camel Raw, here in Valencia, presumably with an absolute gale behind him, in 13:01, according to the information on our system. If that's the case, well, there's never, ever been anything close to that in the history of road racing at 10K or half marathon. Yima and Kifle having a battle now. This is the battle for third place. Camel is gone. Here he is, champion to be crowned once again in a few seconds' time. Cheddaben in the background is going hell for leather to try and catch him, though. He's held on really well as Cheddaben for Bahrain. They're going to take the silver. He's, what, about 60 metres down. But there's a fabulous battle between Kifle and Yima at the moment for the bronze medal. And they are closing in turn on Cheddaben. I think they're all absolutely flying here. 200 metres to run for Jeffrey Camero. 59:30 on the clock as he went through that point. It's going to be so close to 60 minutes. He's been there before many times. He's a sub-59 performer. As we see Camero now in the home straight with about 150 to go. The battle is continuing. There's a battle royal unfolding for the bronze medal between Yima and Kifle. Camero punches the air in the city of the arts and sciences. He's loving it. He's smiling all the way as he approaches the tape. It's title number 3. 60 minutes just clicks by. That matters not a jot. 60:02, the unofficial winning time for the Kenyan, who has his hat-trick. Quite remarkable here in the Trinidad Alfonso Valencia 2018 World Half Marathon Championships. Cheddaben hangs on for second place. Sprints across the line, about 20 seconds down unofficially, 60:22. And Kifle takes the bronze for Eritrea. He wins that little dust-up for the minor medal, with Yima, the frustrated fourth, crossing the line there looking absolutely spent. Boy, oh boy. Jeffrey Camero letting it all pour out. Talk about wearing your heart in your sleeve there over the last 50 metres, punching the air, smiling to the big crowds here in the home straight as Mola comes home for fifth place. And they continue to cross the line. Mezel there, sixth place, Getahun of Ethiopia. There is Bunders. What a run from him, unofficially in 8th place, I think. Osbil in 9th place, another Ethiopia, another Turk there for Europe. Gebres Lassie, Ayalu, the top 10 are through. Julian Bunders, the top European, in 8th place, 61:03. Fabulous running from the young Swiss. The American there, Sam Chalanga, coming through. Chalanga in 14th place, his time 61:23. And still they sprint for the line. Okombo there, well, that's been a baptism for him, hasn't it? The young man who was one of the quickest in the world this year, finishing down in about 15th or 16th place. In fact, 18th place for Okombo, 61:34. He's had a tough day.
Yeah, he had a really tough day. I wonder if he was the actual faller. Did we work out who was the faller in the early stages? But there was a Kenyan athlete fell, so it may have been him.
That's a good point. It probably was. Jeffrey Kipsang Camero, though, from the New York title, New York Marathon title, I should say, to the World Half Marathon title. All he's had so far this year is a couple of cross-country races back in Kenya. He won the Kenyan Prisons Championship, and then he won the Kenyan cross-country title a couple of weeks ago. So he's in fine fettle. Lamdasem has come home for Spain in, 28th place. The first of the Spanish finishers. Adan of Britain comes through. I'm just checking.
Bernard Lagat has finished in 62:16, so is he the second oldest or the oldest competitor in the race, finished in 31st position?
Well, he was hoping desperately to break 62 minutes, Bernard, today, but that is his personal best, 62 minutes exactly. But under the circumstances, you know, with the start of the race so slow for all of these men, these are remarkably good times. I mean, just checking how many men went under 62 minutes. The first 24 men under 62 minutes here in Valencia. And if you want how many went under 61 minutes, I can tell you it was the first 7 men. Bunders was 8th with 61:03, just outside that mark. Good racing, good running. Herzog, the Austrian, delighted with his run. It's all relative, remember. proud man, and there'll be family and friends back home punching the air in celebration. The time on the clock, 63:30, has just clicked by. That's still good running, Paula, after a slow, tactical first half. And on a windy, pretty cold day, actually. They had rain for about 15 or 20 minutes.
They did, and they've had a range of conditions out there, pretty warm around here this morning, and then it cooled down. The wind's been blowing all day, and that pace in the first 5-10 kilometres was so slow that to run times this quick really reflects how hard they've worked and how fast they've run in the final half of the race.
Diego Estrada there of the USA on his day. A great athlete, Estrada, with a best of 60:51, coming home in almost exactly 64 minutes. But, well, normal service was served, so to speak, with Kenya taking the title of Jeffrey Kamworor, Bahrain's Abraham Chereben taking second spot. There's the finishing form of Kamworor as we see that replay of him in glorious isolation, as was the case in the women's race for their winner, who was quite supreme today, winning by an even bigger margin, Kabede, and net-to-net, Gudeta Kabede. So the honours shared then by Ethiopia and Kenya in the women's and men's races, respectively. But that's the biggest smile of the day from Jeffrey Kamworor. Boy, has he enjoyed that. And Paula, his last 10K, you're meant to be clever. Can you do the maths? I mean, if he did run 13:01 for that fourth 5-kilometre segment, his last 10K must have been well under 28 minutes. I mean, way under.
It's going to be low 27s, isn't it? What was the 15K?
Well, no, 10K was 29:28. 20K 57:14. There you are, folks. You've got it at home now. You can do the maths. We'll try to bring it to you as quickly as we can. But in the meantime, let's confirm that win for Jeffrey Kamworor, 60:02. He does have a first name, Jeffrey. Abraham Chereben, 60:22. It was a 20-second margin between silver and gold. And Kifle taking the bronze, 60:31, in a personal best for the Eritrean. Quite fabulous. Jamal Yima, Mola Getahun, what packing from the Ethiopians, 4th, 5th and 6th. That's the team title there for the Ethiopians. They've been able to turn over the Kenyans on this occasion. 27:16, my mathematical genius beside me is saying, Paula Radcliffe. 27:16 for that 10K between 10K and 20K.
Yeah.
That is a statistic for the history books that will stand for a long, long time, I'm sure. As we see the 10th place through to the 18th place as a combo, well, he will have expected a lot more today if he was the young lad who fell. Very, very unfortunate for him. We did see a Kenyan vest go down at around, was it in the first half, I think?
Yeah, but I'm not sure it was
race.
a combo. He seemed to be still up at that time. It may have been actually Basotin.
And our forthcoming finishers include Al-Haydi Ramesh.
Well, some good athletes there. Bahrain's El Abbasi was amongst the pre-race favourites, expected certainly to make the top 6 or 8 places. Osaka of Japan, a good run from him as season's best. Plenty of personal bests in there on this day, though. As you can see, Ulad of Denmark, 62:15. And let me remind you, folks, that while the best athletes in the world, the very best, the top 10 or so, can go under 60 minutes, anything under 62.5, 63 minutes is world-class running. These are very, very good times indeed. 44 men under 63 minutes here today, with the Lasiba Precious Mashele in 44th place. Well, the Austrian Herzog we saw celebrating, setting a personal best. That's why he was so happy, 63:22. And Benabou of Spain, another personal best for him. Collis Birmingham of Australia down there in, what, 62nd place, I think it was. That's maybe a little disappointing for Collis on his day. He's very much a world-class trackman and roadman and a great cross-country runner too.
Yeah, no, he may be a little bit. I mean, it's hard to judge from those times. I think Florian Cavallo there of Spain taking a big step up. He's better known maybe as a 1,500-metre runner. To turn out in the World Half Marathon Championships and run a personal best, you can't really ask much more.
Paul Pollock of Ireland running a season's best. Well, of course, it's only March. There'll be an awful lot of season's bests out there. Many of these athletes, the vast majority, I'm sure, won't have run a half marathon so far this year. But there's the scene in the City of Arts and Sciences as we can give you now the team standings. Ethiopia, it's confirmed. The gold medalists in the team race, the top 3 times combined to make 3:02.14, beating Kenya by 26 seconds. Bahrain, in turn, just a further 12 seconds back, take the bronze behind Kenya's silver. and Eritrea, well, not far back at all. 5 seconds back from the bronze medals after 3 hours and 3 minutes of racing from their trio. Uganda a good fifth, the African nations dominating the top 16 places as well. Just Bahrain sneaking in there for those bronze medals. Great Britain down in the 11th place. That's a solid performance from the British. Great running from the Israelis to turn back the likes of Japan and France, Australia, Great Britain as well. Turkey, well, down in 17th place. The strength of their squad isn't in depth so much as with one or two individuals at the moment. And Ireland bringing up their in 19th place, but some good performances buried in there as well. Well, I do hope you've enjoyed this coverage from Valencia. The sun beginning to lower in the sky, the wind still very strong, there's distinct moisture in the air, and it's almost cold sitting here by the finish line. Paula Radcliffe looking frozen actually, still with a smile on her face as ever, as we see these astonishing structures one after another here in Valencia. A city well worth visiting, a glorious port, miles and miles of beaches. Had a marvellous meal out by the beaches last night in this fabulous city on the east coast of Spain. Well, I do hope you've enjoyed the racing here from Valencia, the city of running. The 23rd edition of the IAAF Trinidad Alfonso World Half Marathon Championships, Valencia 2018, saw the spoils shared between Kenya and Ethiopia. Ethiopia taking the team titles, Kenya taking the men's title through Jeffrey Kamworor, his third consecutive win, and of course Belete Kebede taking that women's gold medal. Chereben raced on long and hard to hang on to that silver medal in the men's race, as Kifle for Eritrea was able to turn back the challenge of Yima. A little glance over his shoulder there, and they did all finish in fabulous form. It was more like a track race today over those last few kilometres. Paula, a final word from you quickly?
I just think a big thank you to the city of Valencia. I think they've staged an excellent World Half Marathon Championships and really reflected that mantra of the city of running. Many of them still out there on the streets, and we hope they're going to achieve their best and their dreams today.
You know, I can remember going to the Sydney Olympic Games, and it was so fantastic. Everybody was saying afterwards, can we just go back there every 4 years? And I feel a little bit like that here today. This city has been quite magnificent.
And they have worked so hard. I mean, you can just see the backdrop to this finishing straight here. And had it been perfect conditions, I think we could have seen something really very special on the streets of Valencia today.
Julian Bunders, a fabulous run from the young Swiss. 61.03 to finish in 8th place. And the Turk Ozbilen, the other European in the top 10.
He's had a hard day, hasn't he? He's run hard.
Well, I'm sure there have been pirates here in years gone by. Good night out was had by all. Well, the setting is unique. It is perhaps the most spectacular of any edition of the World Half Marathon Championship staged by the IAAF in years gone by. The host cities keep stepping up to the plate. They are keen to host this one. It's got a special feel to it, the World Half Marathon Championships. Let's just confirm for you that win as we see a slow motion replay of the form of Kebede, Netzanet Gudeta Kebede, to take that women's title. Not quite the same celebrations for her down the home straight, but a more convincing win all the same for Netzanet Kebede, with Joycelyn Jepkoski taking that silver medal. How she rallied, you have to admire that, because she looked decidedly rough with a few miles to go, a few kilometres to go. She hung on to take the silver ahead of her teammate Pauline Kamulu, who came home for a brilliant bronze, 66.56, just a couple of seconds behind Jepkoski. And then, of course, it was Bahrain's Eunice Chumba, who took perhaps the worst position of all in 4th place. But again, just to underline the calibre of that women's race today, the first 12 going under, in fact the first 13 going under 70 minutes. Eshte there in 10th place for Bahrain. Well, this might be the city of running, but it feels like the city of sport with the glorious facilities we've witnessed on this coverage. Kebede winning in 66.11 in this Women's Half Marathon World Championship. Jepkoski some way back in 2nd place with 66.54. And in third place, Kamulu, 66.56. And once again, just to show you the lower finishers, Shete that down in 10th place. Charlotte Purdue, 71.21 in 21st place for Great Britain. Not too many Europeans making the top 20, that's for sure. Calvin of France, Tejeda of Peru, Arthur of Great Britain. Plenty of personal bests and season's bests peppering these results pages, of course, as you would expect.
Yeah, Tracy Barlow, personal best there, 72.35. All the way down, they've run very fast times, which really, considering the conditions, again, we keep saying, but it is a fast course. Faye Fullerton, 73.56, another personal best. Gemma Steele just ahead of her, not quite a personal best, and I think she's had a tough run out there today. But this course could be a very, very fast course in perfect conditions.
It certainly could, and that shot shows you very clearly just how flat the Valencia Valley is. In the team standings for women, Ethiopia winning from Kenya and Bahrain, with Japan in fourth. A close fourth for Japan, by the way, not far off the medals. And then the rest of them coming home. So again, some very, very good performances in there by individuals and entire squads. Gibraltar bringing up the rear in the women's team competition. Well, the beaches don't look quite as enticing in March and on a windy, relatively cold evening as they will do in 2 or 3 months' time. But this was the action on the start line earlier on as the women got underway at 5:05 local time on a bridge which is virtually the highest point in the city. That's a field of, 122 women from 53 nations. Well, the early pace was quick in the women's race. Remember, we had a world record in that women's race from Kebede, 66.11, a women only world record, with Joycelyn Jepkosgei close to the old mark as well. But unusually, Paula, the women took the race out much harder today than the men. You normally see the women go out a little bit. Well, I'm not talking about your era, don't give me that look.
Women much more likely to get after it and work hard out there, Tim.
I'm not going to argue. You know more than me. The men's race, well, there was no world record. There was no sub-60-minute time today. Nobody prepared to really take it on in the early stages. And the elite men's field of 160 getting away just in time to avoid the massive rush from the 15,000, almost 15,000 mass race behind them, as you can see there on the start bridge. Osbilen amongst the early leaders, Paul Pollock of Ireland there as well. It was Julian Bunders of Switzerland who set off, I thought, over-optimistically very fast through the first couple of kilometres, but boy did he run well to come home in 8th place just outside 61 minutes.
Yeah, he really underlined that his 60.09 earlier, well, not so long ago, a month ago or so, was no fluke, and he's really in very, very good shape.
Well, in the mid-stages of the women's race, I think both you and I were expecting Joycelyn Jepkosgei. We thought she was just biding her time, and then she would begin to turn the screw and surge and move away in the second half, but that's not the way it turned out, as she was through the middle section of the race in a pack of 4. In the men's race, the pack stayed more like 40 for that stage, much, much bigger, far more reluctant running from the men through the early stages today. But Joycelyn Jepkosgei was the first of a trio that got away eventually to crack. Really surprising. She was 5th in the Ras Al Khaimah half marathon in early February. Second today. It's nice in a way that the sport is not so predictable, Paula, that she will not win every time just because she's world record holder every time she puts on her racing shoes.
It is, and I think that's the beauty of the sport. It is that unpredictability, and you don't know. We don't know how well prepared they've come into races. We don't know who's had which niggles and how it's all going to pan out in the race, and that's why we're so intrigued to watch it and why we really enjoy watching these races rather than time trials.
This is the men's race when Cameron began to impose himself towards the front a little bit more when he reached 15k, and there was the fall from one of the Kenyans, and you see Cameron there was aware that one of his compatriots had gone down, but there was not much he could do to help his comrade. Kebede, meanwhile, was stamping her authority on the women's race with just a few kilometres to go as the rain came down towards the latter stages of the women's race, probably around halfway in the men's race. Very unexpected, and they had just about everything. Bright sunshine. It was very warm here in the city this morning. It was probably about 23, 24 degrees in Valencia this morning, but it's decidedly cool, almost chilly this evening, with local time now just before 7 o'clock. Kebede, though, came home in isolation to a glorious gold for Ethiopia and a dominant run from the 27-year-old. That was a world record, a women's only world record, 66 minutes 11 seconds. Jeb Koski, her world record in a mixed race safe, but 66.54 for the silver today, and Kamulu the bronze in 66.56. Meanwhile, the men were deeply embedded in their race, and Kamuro, once he turned the screw at 15k, began to ease away. Yima went with him, Kifle as well, but they all had to give ground to what was an astonishing statistic that I'm still almost disbelieving of, that the fourth 5 kilometre segment was run in 13:01. The course profile and the wind direction that we agreed upon at the start of the race does suggest that he had a following wind for much of that last 5k, but Jeffrey Kamuro there running at track racing speed for 5 kilometres from 15 to 20 kilometres. Slight drop as well. Chereben here hanging on with that somewhat ungainly style of his, but very effective nonetheless, to take that super silver for Bahrain. And the crowds were big today. They built up as the afternoon wore on. I mean, presumably, Paul, you can get in situations where the crowd are making so much noise you can't hear what's going on behind you, and you'd be worried of somebody creeping up on you.
Yeah, very much so, and I think particularly in the noisier sections, and you've got the wind blowing in your ears as well as the noise of the crowd, it's very hard to hear anybody creeping up behind you, and you just have to focus on your own race and running as hard as you can.
Well, Kamuro didn't have to worry about anybody creeping up on him. He won by 20 seconds in 60.02 from Cheruben's 60.22. The silver going to Bahrain, and the bronze to Eritrea there. Fabulous running in that men's race for the bronze from Aran Kifle. 60.31 his time. Jamal Yima fighting fourth for Ethiopia, 60.33, another couple of seconds down. Well, the shadows lengthening in Valencia as spring is sprung in these parts, although you wouldn't know it with the temperature in this city right now, as plenty of the mass runners are finishing here in front of us in the City of Arts and Sciences. It's the busiest port in the Mediterranean, is Valencia. The fifth biggest container port in Europe. And from here, of course, goods spread out across Spain and the whole Iberian Peninsula, as indeed will the news of these fabulous race results today spread around the world. But the message is much the same as in years gone by in the men's race. Jeffrey Kamuro is undisputed world number one at the half marathon. And in the women's race, net-to-net, Kebede, well, even more dominant as the women's champion on this occasion. Life in the city will return to normal, I'm sure. The ships will come and go, the tourists will come and go. The running and the racing will continue as well. This is a city which prides itself with the title, the City of Running, and it stages over 50 races a year. It's a glorious blend of modern and historic architecture. Somewhere which I think over these last couple of days I've convinced myself, Paul, I need to come back to and spend a little bit more time in.
Yeah, it's definitely a city that I would like to explore more as well. It's a really clever blend of the old and the new. We can see there the new buildings really blend in so well with the character and the history of the city. They made the decision to divert the river, and then they really capitalized on the space that created to make a feature and a focus feature for this city, and to really get behind it as a healthy feature and make it something for sport.
Well, we're waiting for the presentations now here at the finish area in the City of Arts and Sciences as we see these glorious aerial shots. A lot of Moorish influence here in Valencia. It's a city that has, like so many in the Iberian Peninsula, experienced conflict for centuries, and indeed twice in its history has been the capital of Spain, once just for a year or so in the Spanish Civil War in the 30s. But of course, the rights went back to Madrid, along with soccer rights apparently. Well, you can see now, with the density of the buildings here, why they have said that prior to the riverbed, the river being removed and the old riverbed being turned into a long, wide park winding through the city was short of open space.
Yeah, very much so. The only real park feature, aside from small parks like that one in shot right now, is the whole of the 17-kilometre or 18-kilometre long stretch of the drained riverbed, which is fairly wide too, and they've really put a lot of parks in there for children, a lot of play areas, rugby pitches, which is probably unusual in Spain, football pitches out there as well, tennis courts, and then these running trails that run the whole way along, and people really use them, and it's nice to see so many people out there making good use of it.
There's a glorious view facing eastwards out into the Mediterranean, the Balearic Islands just over the horizon, and that massive container port, along with a lot of rather nice yachts in the distance. But it has lived up to all expectation today, this championship, and we can go now to the medal ceremonies where, of course, the individual and team awards will be made. As you can see there, just to a centre left of picture, the presentation days pokes out into the water areas around these astonishing structures. But the IAAF Trinidad Alfonso World Half Marathon Championship Valencia 2018 medal ceremony will take place in this unique setting. And there has been, alongside these championships, a road running seminar organised by the IAAF, which was a very interesting day through yesterday, Friday, the day before these championships. But it is first of all the three female medalists who will step forward. In third place, a young athlete about whom I have not heard a great deal in years gone by, but I'm sure I will in years to come. Just 23 years old, Kenya's Pauline Kamulu takes the bronze medal. Her time, 66.56, some 45 seconds behind the winner, just 2 seconds behind the silver medalist. Here she is, Pauline Kavake Kamulu. I wonder if this is something she'll have to get used to, this young lady. She's run 31.47 for 10,000 metres on the track, just under 15 minutes for 5,000 metres, but has never run in any senior championship before. She has run in the World Junior cross country, but I think she'll be seeing a lot more Kenyan vests in years to come. The silver medal just 2 seconds in front of her teammate, Joycelyn Koski, still smiling, the world record holder, still the world record holder, but beaten today by a much better athlete on the occasion of this 23rd IAAF World Half Marathon Championships. Her time 66.54, just a couple of seconds ahead of Kamulu. 43 seconds down on the astonishing winner though. And while we know the name of Netsnet Gudeta, and she's placed highly in these championships before, 6th and 4th in the last two championships, we didn't expect such a dominant win from this Ethiopian. A women's only world record, 66.11 for Kebede, as she's been called, Gudeta, in all the notes handed out around the championships. She didn't finish the Dubai Marathon back in January, a couple of months ago. Well, that maybe was a wise decision, whatever the reason. She was 6th in the Paris Marathon last year, but in a fairly modest 2:29. But she has real strength, good speed, and today she combined those to produce certainly the biggest win of her life. And at the age of 27, she is world champion. It's been a good few weeks for the Ethiopians. Just last month, they took several titles in the World Indoor Championships in Birmingham, UK, and today they have another glorious gold through this young lady, Netzanet Gudeta Kebede. Ethiopia, sandwiched by a brace of Kenyans, but spoils go to the Ethiopians. And they took the team race as well, let's forget, with Kebede, Yima and Belete, their scoring trio. So it will be double gold for Kebede. And we will see her again in a few minutes when the teams step forward.
And we now have a special presentation. It is a check for $50,000 for a new women's-only world record of 66 minutes and 11 seconds, presented by IAAF President Sebastian Coe to the winner, Netzanet Kebede of Ethiopia.
Well, Kebede's winning check, $50,000. Sebastian Coe, the president of the IAAF, stands alongside her there as she receives her prize money for victory at these IAAF Trinidad Alfonso World Half Marathon Championships Valencia 2018 women's race. That's not a bad little paycheck to take back to Addis Ababa. Kenya took the team title 2 years ago from Ethiopia, but they've turned the tables on this occasion, have the Ethiopians. Japan taking the bronze medals in Cardiff 2 years back. Today the bronze medals going to Bahrain, with Japan having to settle for fourth. Still great result for the Japanese squad. And now that men's medal ceremony can get underway. The world record for a women-only race set in that women's race, don't let's forget, by Kebede, 66.11. Well, there was no chance of a world record in the men's race, not at least for the overall result, although some of the splits, I'm sure, were world records in effect. Tadese's world record from Lisbon 2010, 58.23. That stays strong, stays unthreatened. Fastest time in the world this year, 58.42 by Bidan Karoki. That was in Ras Al Khaimah back on the 9th of February. And as the masses continue to pour down the home straight here through the City of Arts and Sciences, so the men's ceremony will get underway with Jeffrey Kamworor ready to accept his third consecutive gold medal at a World Half Marathon Championships. That consistency is quite extraordinary. Only Tadese in the history of this event, and remember this is the 23rd edition, has notched up more than 2 consecutive victories. He had 4 consecutive titles to his name. Well, Kamworor will have to come back in 2 years' time to match that. How they love their running here. Don't suppose too often they have to run in wind and rain like today, Paula.
No, I just think it's a huge shame for the organisers. They put so much effort into this, and then the weather hasn't really played ball, but it hasn't stopped so many people getting out there on the streets and running personal bests out there, just really enjoying this amazing course that's been laid out for them, and the organisation has been top-notch as well. I think.
And you know, a line that Sebastian Coe used yesterday at the road running seminar, which is a very significant one, is that this is the most participated sport in the world. There are more runners than there are footballers. There are more runners than golfers, cyclists, swimmers. it's a sport which welcomes everybody. You know, we're all born able to do it.
Exactly, and now we're watching in front of us runners streaming down the same finishing chute that we've just seen a women's world record. We've just seen Geoffrey Kamworor underline his dominance as the world's best half marathon racer, and they're still coming in down here an hour and 35 and experiencing the same emotions out there. They've run the same course, and there's very few sports where I can think that you can share in exactly the same course, exactly the same race, finish on the same straight as the world champion.
No, that's exactly right. And it's a nice idea, and it's creeping into more and more major championships around the world at continental level and global level. These mass races alongside or just behind the elite races at championships. Hasn't yet crept into the Olympics, but it's probably only a matter of time. I don't know, I think the Olympics is that bit different, isn't it? People want to watch it rather than participate even more.
Yeah, I think the danger is that so many of the courses, particularly for the road races, for the marathon at the Olympics, they're designed on loop courses, and it would be very difficult to have the mass races in there without it getting in the way. Interestingly, in the World Cross Country, the IAAF World Cross Country Championships next year, there is going to be a mass race run over the same course. I'm not sure it goes at the same time, but it will give the runners a chance to experience that same course, which hasn't really been done before for the cross country.
I can assure you it won't be at the same time, because it's a multi-lap course, and we'd have Kamworor
in inner circuits and outer circuits. I don't know.
A spiral, yes. Now that's in Aarhus, Denmark, isn't it, in March next year? Although the IAAF, with recent decisions, have announced some adjustments to the calendar and the World Cross Country in the years to come. I think it's going to be in February, is it?
I think I don't know whether it's completely confirmed yet, but they're certainly looking at moving it towards the second half of February to try and make more distinct divisions about when certain seasons take place. So the cross country ideally would be done maybe before the road running part comes in, but I'm not sure that can work through there. They tend to kind of run concurrent, the cross country and road racing.
Well, that's exactly right. And you do get specialists of each discipline, don't you? Even though it's all about one foot in front of the other. I mean, you were fairly competent at both, I suppose.
And Geoffrey Kamworor is pretty good at all of the surfaces as well.
Kamworor's pretty good. No, exactly right. And he manages to combine it all too. You know, he's very selective in his racing, isn't he? But I think what people tend to forget is that the medals are things that last forever. You know this perfectly well. Records come and go. Records are borrowed, they're loaned, and somebody will come along and break your record. But actually, the major championship medals are what define a career for the super elite athletes. And Kamworor's made a supreme job of picking the right races and getting it right on the day and having a drawer full of these gold medals.
Yeah, and it's very rarely that Geoffrey Kamworor turns up to a race and doesn't race well. He usually gets it right on the big occasion, and he's underlined that time and time again at the World Cross Country and at the World Half Marathon Championships and on the track. And I think now it's just building to see what he can do from that in the future, maybe over the marathon.
Well, we can now, I think, go down to that little presentation area to the centre left of picture and get underway with the men's presentations. Of course, they didn't finish that long ago, having started, some 25 minutes after the ladies.
Ladies and gentlemen, the medal ceremony.
And here we go, the first three athletes in that men's championship. The IAAF Trinidad Alfonso World Half Marathon Championship, Valencia 2018, produced a familiar face for the man who took the title. And Geoffrey Kamworor, who we were just discussing, in the centre of that trio of athletes there, winning by 20 seconds today. Some great racing behind him for the minor medals and minor places as well, as Sebastian Coe. Nicely wrapped up, as you would expect, in these temperatures, although they're not the temperatures we expected in Valencia. Seb Coe on camera looking decidedly cold, I have to say.
He's wishing he'd run it now, isn't he? It'd be warmer.
I'm wishing I'd run it to keep a bit warmer. I expect you are as well. Well, in third place from Eritrea, he won in a sprint by a couple of seconds from Yima of Ethiopia. Aaron Kifle of Eritrea, 60 minutes and 31 seconds. He had a real dust-up. He had to battle for that medal, perhaps as hard as anybody, to keep Yima at bay, because Yima and Mola of Ethiopia were fourth and fifth. In silver, Abraham Nabai Cheroben for Bahrain, taking second place, 60 minutes and 22 seconds, exactly 20 minutes behind the eventual, 20 seconds behind the eventual winner. It was a very, very sound run from him indeed. He was isolated for the last few kilometres, but he battled on well to keep those at bay behind him. And he is now a World Championship silver medalist. And the champion, the gold medalist, for the third consecutive time from Kenya in a time of 60.02. He's broken 60 minutes plenty of times. He won't be worried about that. Jeffrey Kipsang Kamworor, his first road race of the year. All he's done prior to today in 2018 is a couple of cross-country races back in Nairobi. He's won both of those. He wins again here today. And a lovely smile from this lovely man. He's a delightful fellow, easy to chat to, eloquent, erudite, and a very, very smart racer too. And the discipline required to maintain this consistency of being champion again and again is quite extraordinary. Well, booming out around the City of Arts and Sciences, the Kenyan national anthem, one that Jeffrey Kamworor has heard many a time, and many a time it's been played because of his great racing exploits. Just confirmed for you, he was champion there in 60.02, 20 seconds ahead of Cheroben and Bahrain, the former Kenyan, and Arden Kiflev Eritrea taking the bronze with a personal best, 60.31. And let me just remind you too of the astonishing running in the second half of that race for Jeffrey Kamworor, as Paula Radcliffe with her mathematics quite quickly worked out. His 5 kilometres between 15k and 20 kilometres was 13:01, 13 minutes and 1 second for a road racing 5k towards the end of a half marathon. That is unprecedented by many, many seconds. And Paula here, my delightful co-commentator, just working out the time of the second 5 kilometres. It was 27:46. The first 10k was 29:28. The second 10k, sorry, not 5k, 10k was 27:46. That's got to be one of the biggest differentials ever between two halves of a half marathon, so to speak.
Definitely, and when most of that running was done in that second of 5 kilometre of that second half, that really shows. I mean, even that split from 10 kilometres to 15 kilometres, they hadn't really started racing. It was pretty sedate. It was that all made up, and all of the racing was done from 15k to 20k, and that even that last kilometre slowed down again to I think 2:49.
Well, that was the men's field getting underway here in Valencia in glorious sunshine. Ironically, the skies have cleared above us. It's a blue sky here in Valencia on this super Saturday evening. Oh, there was a faller there at the start. That might have been Collis Birmingham who went down. Yes, it was. That would explain why Birmingham was down the field. Tough for his Australian fans and friends and family. And Birmingham, of course, eventually finishing down in, was it 44th place, something like that, I think? Well, just to get up and continue the race was fantastic for Birmingham. Just trying to see. In fact, he finished in 62nd, my apologies. 63.44.
Yeah,
That's still great running after falling so heavily at the start.
It's very good because he fell very, very heavily there.
The women's race, well, it's so different in its complexion overall to the men's race. Fabulous racing in both, but the women went out hard and aggressively from the start to the eventual winning time. A world record for a women's only race, 66.11 by net-to-net Gudeta Kebede. The men's race, the gold going to Jeffrey Kamboro. A slow meandering affair for the first half, 10k reached in 29.28. And the winning time 60.02 incorporated a second 10 kilometres of 27.46 and a 5 kilometre segment between 15 and 20k of 13.01. Well, it's been a fabulous day's racing here in Valencia. The IAAF Trinidad Alfonso World Half Marathon Championship, Valencia 2018, the 23rd edition of these championships, was indeed very special for a variety of reasons, but I've enjoyed it immensely. My thanks to all of you for watching and listening. My thanks to the production team and to Valencia itself for putting on a fabulous day of racing. And to you, Paula, thank you for joining me as well. For myself, Tim Hutchings, and everybody here in Valencia, I wish you a very good weekend, a good Sunday, and goodbye. Bye-bye.